Very good morning. You're watching the ABC News channel, and we are bringing you this live breaking news this morning that a security incident has interrupted the White House Correspondents Dinner in Washington, D.C. President Donald Trump is in attendance for the first time as a sitting president, along with many of his secretaries of state. Guests have been seated for a short time when Secret Service flooded the room and yelled for people to get down. This was the moment. At the moment, then, the secretaries of state were one by one picked out by the security detail and taken out of the room as the shocked journalists watched on and Secret Service issued instructions. So that was the moment it all happened about an hour ago. Obviously, a room full of journalists, and we have a clip of the very famous CNN anchor Wolf Blitzer, who says he was near the shooting.
It's very, very worrisome what happened. Just coincidentally, after they served the appetizers, I walked out to simply go to the men's room, but you have to walk up these stairs and walk out, and which I was doing. And as I was walking back towards the door to get back into the big area where the event was taking place, all of a sudden I start hearing gunshots in the hall right near me. And the next thing I knew, a police officer threw me to the ground and was on top of me. And I was listening and watching what was going on. And apparently they got the gunman who had a major weapon there, but it was so worrisome. The noise was so loud in a small area, and all of a sudden I'm seeing gunshots. And then they grab me, the police officers, and they take me back into the men's room where it was safe, and there were about 15 other men who are stuck in there, and they won't let them out. And that's what happened. And then after a while, they let me out, and I'm out now. I'm not back in the ballroom, but everything is apparently closing down. Very scary incident. All of a sudden, a guy with a weapon, and it was a very, very serious weapon, he starts shooting, and I happened to have been a few feet away from him as he was shooting. And, of course, the first thing that went through my mind is he trying to shoot me. And I don't think he was trying to shoot me, but I was very close to him as the gunshots were fired. And it was very, very scary, but I'm okay now.
Well, so a very frightening situation there for the veteran journalist and presenter Wolf Blitzer, who was right by where the shooting happened. So as Wolf Blitzer was saying there, it was outside the actual ballroom. And if we watch these pictures from the back of the ballroom again, looking at the stage where President Trump is sitting, you can really tell the sequence of events, because there are the shots. Look at the journalists that are closest to us. They can hear them, but the president at the back hasn't responded. He's still watching that magic trick. Secret Service jump into action and move in front of the president. The journalists are all looking to the back of the room. They hear the shots.
And then you can hear the Secret Service there yelling at everyone to get down and stay down. It's unclear exactly. I can understand for a lot of people in that room exactly what has happened, especially given now we know that those shots came from outside of that room. It's unlikely anyone in there would have seen anything, but they would have just been hearing this chaos unfolding outside and around them. The president then whisked away quite quickly, along with, as we've seen since, all of the other dignitaries and secretaries. We saw Pete Hegseth being walked out of that room. It would have been quite a difficult, as you were saying earlier, Lorna, security situation with all of those dignitaries dotted around quite a large ballroom, 2,500 people inside that room as this incident unfolded.
A person is in custody is the latest we are hearing from the AP news agency. Authorities saying that a person is in custody after a shooting incident near a security checkpoint. That goes along with what Wolf Blitzer was saying there, was outside the ballroom before you went through the scanners. We're still keeping an eye on those live shots coming to us from the White House Correspondents Dinner, because President Trump has said that he wants to go on with the show and that he may well be returning. But the journalists inside the room saying law enforcement is still on the premises and still brandishing weapons currently as they sweep the floor, and the correspondents, the reporters, the journalists, the bosses that are in there are still hanging around waiting to see what is going to happen. John Lyons, who was towards the back of the room as well, spoke to me a short time earlier about what it was like being in the room.
For about 15 minutes or so, a lot of people were under the tables. Complete chaos. And the protocol here is, I'm told, that if one shot goes off at an event with the president, then the whole event then gets immediately cancelled, because on the theory that if one gun was able to get through, then they assume perhaps others have got through. And a lot of people in the room seem to think that somebody was shot dead, perhaps the alleged shooter or whatever, but there was certainly about 3 or 4 gunshots heard by a lot of people. So complete fear, complete chaos. There's a lot of people still in the room, White Stone, not knowing what to do. The hotel, I think, are in lockdown. And I think with this sort of thing, they always fear if there is one possible shooter, then there might be others. And so that's the reason that there's so much fear and confusion at the moment. I've never seen as many Secret Service ever before in my life, before this event. Huge security, several different sections of metal detectors. I went at one point to the bathroom and then had to after that go back out and come back in through security. So very, very heavy security. And so it's remarkable if someone was able to get a gun into the event. So one moment there's the President of the United States sitting at the main table alongside the head of CBS, the First Lady and so forth.
We're leaving John there because there's an announcement coming from the ballroom in Washington.
My apologies, his post on Truth Social. And law enforcement has requested that we leave the premises consistent with protocol. And he wanted to emphasize that nobody was hurt. He and the First Lady, the cabinet, everybody's safe. The president will be having a press briefing at the White House in 30 minutes. That is not a joke. And he insists that we will reschedule this event in the next 30 days. And that he wanted to do it tonight. He wanted to continue despite the news, but has to follow security protocol. I said earlier tonight that journalism is a public service, because when there is an emergency, we run to the crisis, not away from it. And on a night when we are thinking about the freedoms in the First Amendment, we must also think about how fragile they are. I saw all of you reporting, and that's what we do. So, thank God everybody is safe. and thank you for coming together tonight. We will do this again. Thank you.
Weijia Jiang, clearly quite emotional, saying that the event will not carry on tonight.
However, we have heard that the US President Donald Trump wanted the event to continue tonight, but that he has promised it will be rescheduled within the next 30 days. That law enforcement has requested everyone there leave the premises. This is a post on social media from the US President, announcing he'll also be giving a press conference from the White House press briefing room within the next 30 minutes or so. Along with the First Lady, the Vice President and all cabinet members there, he says, are in perfect condition. We've heard there, thankfully, no reports of injuries at the moment after a shooting at the White House Correspondents Dinner. We understand one person is in custody and we will hopefully get some more details from the US President and those others at the press briefing that is expected to take place in the next 30 minutes or so.
Yeah. Various shots coming in from different areas now. I've got another clip that I want to bring you of security inside the hotel announcing that the shooter is in custody.
It is now a crime scene. Secret Service is in custody, has the person in custody. Everything's okay. One shooter, no, we know so far. Everybody's good. It is now a crime scene. Secret Service is in custody, has the person in custody. Everything's okay. One shooter, no, we know so far.
Yeah, a crime scene, of course. If shots have been fired, someone is in custody. According to the Secret Service agents, probably 25 minutes' time, the president and his entourage are currently on their way back to the White House, a short distance from the Hilton there in Washington, where he will give this press briefing. You heard the journalists in the room having a bit of a giggle about that, because all the journalists that would be at his press briefing are all dressed in their finery in the ballroom of the Hilton in Washington. Let's bring in Planet America host John Barron, who is with us now. Hi there, John. They'll be scrambling across to the other side of town to go to the White House press briefing. What a night.
Remarkable, quite remarkable, Lorna. The fact that this has happened in the most public possible of forums, with literally thousands of America's top political journalists and celebrities assembled to hear the President of the United States address the White House Correspondents Association. This is the first time that President Trump, as president, has attended this particular event. He refused to in his first term, partly because of the adversarial relationship that he's tended to have with the White House press corps. It's a strange tradition dating back to the 1920s, the Coolidge administration of the 1920s. It's something reminiscent of a Friars Club or celebrity roast, where an MC will poke fun at the president will then poke fun back at the assembled press and be self-deprecating as well. So there was a lot of interest in what the president was going to say. Now, of course, we're waiting to hear the president make some remarks from the White House itself. Whether those correspondents are going to be released from lockdown in the DC Hilton Hotel to go back to their desks and then report on the president's actual speech from the White House very much remains to be seen. But just a remarkable thing that has happened here tonight.
And a massive security risk anyway, when you've got all of those top officials from the administration, from the White House, in the one room, dispersed around the room as well. John, I know you're watching the pictures. All these pictures are coming into us fresh as journalists were filming, so please do comment on any of them if you wish to at any stage. But just, John, quite remarkable to see RFK Jr. being escorted out with his wife, surrounded by those Secret Service agents, and Pete Hegseth.
The fact that this is happening, of course, when the United States is still at war in the Middle East, heightens the potential national security risk to key individuals in the Trump administration. The ballroom that we're seeing, Lorna, it's important to understand. It's the reason why the phone reception, when we heard from our reporter there, John Lyons, a little earlier, is so bad. It's not just because there are thousands of journalists all trying to get on the phone at once, but this is also in a basement. This is effectively underground. The shooting, we understand, according to the Secret Service, took place at the metal detector, the magnetometer, just outside the ballroom in a hallway. And we don't know whether the reported shots that were fired by an assailant or by the Secret Service, protecting the president and his cabinet. So still much that is unknown about what unfolded and the extent to which this is a security breach, but still a very traumatic and shocking event for all concerned.
So the White House Correspondents Dinner is going to be rescheduled in the next 30 days. We just heard there from the president saying that. Clearly she was quite emotional. I mean, the history of this event has been an interesting one, should we say. And as you mentioned, Donald Trump hasn't been as president before because he does come in for a bit of a ribbing. So already this night was poised to be quite spectacular.
In a bizarre piece of history, it was in 2011 that Donald Trump last attended this as a private citizen who at the time was peddling the birther conspiracy theory against then President Barack Obama. President Obama on that night roasted Donald Trump from the podium, poking lots of fun at him. According to some accounts, that's the night that Donald Trump decided, in his humiliation, that he would run for president for real in 2016, which of course he did, and he won. That was also the night before Barack Obama had one of the most consequential moments of his presidency. It was the following morning that he announced that Osama bin Laden had been killed by Navy SEAL Team 6. Obama had just given the go order to kill bin Laden moments before he went on that stage, and then started berating and joking about Donald Trump possibly being president one day. That was the last time Donald Trump was at this particular function, and now tonight it's an astonishing bookend to quite a saga.
Watching again, John, as the chaos unfolded, quite remarkable seeing the Secret Service agents climbing onto the stage, shielding President Trump. What struck me as we watched it unfold live were the expressions on the faces of Caroline Leavitt and Melania Trump. I mean, they looked terrified, as we've heard from many journalists in the room. It was terrifying.
Of course, Donald Trump came within millimetres of losing his life just under 2 years ago in that assassination attempt at Butler, Pennsylvania, at a campaign rally. He's a survivor of violence. He knows that there is a target, metaphorically, on his back as President of the United States. He also knows that Iran has been trying to kill him for years. We don't know if there's any connection to Iran in this incident, but there are potentially very, very high stakes here.
These pictures coming to us from outside the Washington Hilton, as you would expect, a massive police presence now that this is a crime scene. 4 or 5 shots apparently heard. Some reports suggesting that some of those shots or ricochets may have hit some of the responding officers who first tried to apprehend someone in the foyer, as you say, John, before those security barriers, one ambulance going away. But at this stage, there are no suggestions that anyone has been hurt in this incident there. So President Trump, John, travels back to the White House. He's going to give a news briefing to the journalists who are going to rush over there, or those perhaps that weren't invited to the dinner there in the Washington Hilton. How do you think he'll frame this?
It depends what he and the Secret Service know about what actually happened, whether indeed we're assuming that he was the likely target of what is presumed to be an assassination attempt. But we don't yet know those details. All we know is shots were fired outside an event where the president and most of his cabinet were, along with most of the best-known reporters in America. So still a lot we don't know, but we do know, of course, historically, Donald Trump, in these moments of great stress and trauma, acts with a fight response and is defiant in the face of a threat. So his tone, his reaction, how he responds after having survived one brush with death 2 years ago, other attempted assassinations, having a bounty on his head from the Iranian government for years, how he responds to this situation now at a time when, of course, he's trying to find a sustainable ceasefire agreement with Iran, talks collapsing again overnight, no progress being made on the diplomatic front. So how this affects him and his conduct of domestic and world affairs will depend very much on who this is that is in custody and what their motive was.
John, I know you'll be back with us throughout the next few hours as this unfolds, this live breaking situation. For our viewers, you can see there, thanks John, for the viewers, you can see there on the screen, we've now got the pictures from the White House, which is indicating that President Trump will appear there shortly. I calculated it that it would be 10 past the hour. That would be half an hour from when the announcement was made. So 10 past the hour is likely when President Trump will stand up and make a statement, take questions back at the White House.
Let's just recap a little bit of what we know so far, that 4 or 5 shots were heard fired just outside of the White House Correspondents Dinner a little earlier today, evening US time, of course. You can see the pictures here now. US President Donald Trump, his wife Melania, being entertained by a magic trick at the table at the White House Correspondents Dinner before shots are heard to be fired outside of that ballroom. You can see the Secret Service jumping into action and bustling the president and other dignitaries away. There were some 2,500 people in that room. At the moment, there are no reports of any injuries. We know one person is in custody, and as Lorna said, we are expecting to hear an update from the White House in the next 20 minutes or so. You can see that feed coming in the corner of your screen there from the White House press briefing room. Donald Trump has, of course, been on social media in the moments since this situation unfolded. He says it was quite an evening in Washington, D.C. The Secret Service and law enforcement did a fantastic job. He says they acted quickly and bravely. That shooter has been apprehended. He has recommended that we let the show go on, but of course, since he's posted this on social media, law enforcement have recommended that it be cancelled entirely. So the show, the White House Correspondents' Dinner, will of course not continue this evening. The US President has promised it will be rescheduled in the next 30 days or so. I want to bring in former US correspondent, former US Bureau Chief Jade McMillan, who's in the studio with us now. Jade, these White House Correspondents' Dinners are quite a significant night in Washington, D.C. Just take us through a little bit of, what people would have been expecting in that room tonight.
Yeah, they are a huge event on the US political calendar. I've been to a couple of them while I was posted in Washington. I think we've seen a flavour of that tonight, but it's hard to overstate just how many administration officials are in that room. The President of the United States, the First Lady, senior members of the US Cabinet, along with very high-profile members of the press and invited guests as well. There are often celebrities in that ballroom. One of the years I went, Kim Kardashian was there, for example. So it is a really high-profile event. A lot of organisation goes into it. You would imagine a lot of security preparations as well. One of the years I went, there were really quite large demonstrations outside, anti-war demonstrations. So it's an event that is very visible and is very much looked forward to on the US political calendar. So to have that many people in this ballroom, it's in a hotel in downtown Washington, D.C., just shocking and shocking despite the fact that we've been here before, that Donald Trump has been the subject. If we don't know exactly what has happened here, but the fact that Donald Trump has been the subject of assassination attempts in the past must have just been so terrifying for everybody in that room.
Yeah, absolutely. Jade, you covered the previous assassination attempt on the president during the presidential campaign. There was a lot of discussion after that around motive and who was, who was going after the US president. Take us through, the significance, I suppose, of a an assassination attempt on a sitting US president, if that is, of course, what has taken place here. We don't, of course, know yet the details of what's happened here tonight. We're seeing some live pictures here of outside the room. It does look like some of those correspondents who were at that dinner are now being released from the hotel or from the ballroom where that dinner was taking place. This is now, obviously, this whole area has been locked down. It's a crime scene. You know, this is a huge incident involving the US president.
Yeah, and we're also getting a feed in from the White House press briefing room, and it looks like journalists are starting to arrive in their formal wear, in their evening gowns, people who were inside that ballroom and are now making their way into the press briefing room at the White House, given that Donald Trump has said that he will be holding a media conference very shortly. So, you know, it's a Saturday night in Washington, D.C. This is a night when the American press really celebrates press freedom and the right to free speech. And there are always questions and criticisms raised around the White House Correspondents Dinner about whether the press and administration officials should be mingling and socialising in this way. And the White House Correspondents Association always argues that this is a really important night to highlight press freedoms. There are also awards given out to journalists. I think there are scholarships often given out to up-and-coming reporters as well. But to have this unfold at that event and to now have, it looks like many of those same reporters coming to this press briefing room waiting to hear from the president, who has just gone through this again as well, is really quite extraordinary.
Absolutely. Some of these pictures that we're seeing coming in really, I think, just show how chaotic and terrifying it must have been in that room. You can see journalists hiding under dinner tables. We know that they had just been served a spring pea and burrata salad on those tables when they were told to get down and stay down before the president was whisked away. Just take us through, Jade, the moments immediately after an incident like this. You know, we've seen how quickly the Secret Service just springs into action.
And we saw that in Butler, Pennsylvania as well, when a shooter fired at Donald Trump, who was then a presidential candidate. That bullet, of course, grazing his ear. We saw how quickly the Secret Service leapt into action at that point in time. And we've seen that again tonight. I mean, again, I haven't been to this dinner for a couple of years now, but you can sort of see from these pictures, I remember thinking how crammed it was, how many people are sort of packed into this ballroom. The type of situation where it's hard to, you know, you pull this chair back to get up and you're sort of bumping into people. You know, so many members of the press, so many invited guests, and then, as I said, those administration officials, along with the President and the First Lady, who were sitting up the front there.
And it would have just added to the security concerns. We've been talking about this a little bit with John Lyons and John Barron a little earlier this morning around, you know, the fact that there are so many dignitaries and so many officials dotted throughout that room. It would have really made that security situation a lot more complex, wouldn't it?
Yeah, and it was interesting listening to John Lyons about what the security arrangements were, because, again, I don't know how things have changed in the past couple of years, but the last time I went, I remember you didn't kind of pass through security, you didn't pass through a metal detector until you got well into the hotel and closer to the ballroom itself. So there was a lot of mingling sort of as you just came into the hotel. There was an area where celebrities posed for photos. I don't remember going through any security until you got closer to the bar area that is outside the ballroom. So it would be interesting to know exactly what the security arrangements were this year. But just the number of people in that room, sadly, again, when you've lived in the United States for long enough, you are very aware of the threat of gun violence. And when you're a journalist covering these sorts of events, or when you're in crowded events a lot, it's sort of always in the back of your mind. And I can imagine a lot of people would have jumped to worst case scenario when they heard those noises, because it's really difficult not to. It just would have been so awful.
You are watching coverage from Washington on the ABC News channel. Welcome to viewers just joining us. Dramatic events in Washington tonight as this security incident unfolded at the White House Correspondents Dinner there in Washington that the President Donald Trump was attending his first time as a sitting president. Shots were fired from a foyer area of the Hilton Hotel there inside the ballroom. Very many of the president's top people. Pete Hegseth was there, he was escorted out. RFK Jr. was there, Marco Rubio, Secretary of State, was there. J.D. Vance, Vice President, was there. You can see President Trump at the top table there. The security detail steps in front of him. Shots are fired towards the back of the room, though we now know it was outside the ballroom. President Trump, Melania Trump, Caroline Leavitt, all there on the top table. They were escorted away from the room as more shots were fired. We were then told that the event would not be continuing. It is a crime scene. The security detail informing reporters around the area that they have a person in custody. There are no immediate reports of any injuries at this stage, though we did see an ambulance leaving the event a short time ago. The room is full of reporters. They were waiting to hear President Trump speak. They were waiting for awards for journalism from the press pack there in Washington, D.C. They have now been postponed, and President Trump has returned to the White House. Many of those journalists as well going over to the White House to listen to President Trump speak within the next 10 or 15 minutes or so about what happened there in the ballroom of the Hilton in Washington, D.C.
Yes, you can see we've got a live feed coming in from the press briefing room, and we will, of course, bring the President's remarks to you when we can. We've got Jade McMillan with us in the studio, former US Bureau Chief for the ABC. Jade, you've been covering US politics for a really long time. You've attended these White House press dinners like this before. This would have just been an absolutely terrifying event for those people inside that room. Just quickly recap for us, who would have been inside that room at this correspondents' dinner this evening when this happened?
Well, this is such a huge event on the US political calendar. It really is a high-profile event. It is something that takes an enormous amount of organisation and planning. Tickets are sold well in advance. It's really the who's who of Washington, D.C. and beyond in that room. You've got the President of the United States, the First Lady. Donald Trump didn't attend last year, but when I went, it was when Joe Biden was president, and he was there both of those years. You've got really high-profile members of the press, the US press, but also members of the international media like ourselves as well in a much smaller capacity. The big outlets host, multiple tables. They bring guests. You've got high-profile members of the administration, senior members of Donald Trump's cabinet, as we've seen there in these pictures. And there are often celebrities in the crowd as well. I think I mentioned earlier, Kim Kardashian was there one year. That just gives you a sense of kind of how broad this event is. It's not just political reporters and staffers and members of the administration. It sort of goes beyond that. But I just remember thinking on both occasions I was there, sort of being awed by how many of those people were in this one room, bumping into the Secretary of State and seeing all of these various members of the administration sort of mingling with reporters and going about their evening. So it is a huge event, and the fact that Donald Trump has actually attended this year when he hadn't in the past as president meant that there was so much focus on this night. This speech that he was going to give was really highly anticipated. There is always an element of sort of poking fun at the president. There's often kind of a self-deprecating tone taken in their speech. There's fun taken at the press. It's sort of normally quite a light-hearted tone with that undertone, as I mentioned earlier, of highlighting press freedom and giving out these awards for journalism. And when I was there, at least, there were scholarships awarded to up-and-coming reporters. So, yeah, hard to overstate how big an event this was, amplified by the fact that Donald Trump was attending this year as president when he hadn't before.
Yeah, and given the significance of the fact that the US president was in the room, as well as all of those other dignitaries, his cabinet members, celebrities, as you say, just describe for us, I suppose, what the security arrangements would have been. We heard a little earlier from our reporter, John Lyons, who was in the room at the time. He talked about, having to go through security to get back into the room, even after leaving to go to the bathroom, that sort of thing. It would have been really, really strict security, so it's quite shocking that something like this could have unfolded, that someone could have even approached the building with a gun.
Well, yeah, that is what I think we need more detail on, exactly what those security arrangements were. I remember when I went, and it was at this same hotel, you did leave the ballroom to kind of access those bathroom areas. That, at least when I was there, was within that zone where you had to go through security, but that may have changed. You would imagine with an event like this, where the president and senior members of his administration are attending, that there would have been an incredible amount of planning going into the security arrangements. We've seen how the Secret Service reacted. There would have been a significant presence, but I would be interested to hear what the security arrangements were for the guests and how far you could kind of get into the hotel itself before you came across those metal detectors.
Jade, actually interesting, the pictures that I've seen, Fox News, our colleagues at Fox News have been showing pictures, moving pictures of the suspected gunman being taken down. They're actually in the area just before, the red carpet shots, when you all file in, you arrive down the escalator, file in, they are beyond that area outside, so that would suggest that they are much further back than what you were talking about.
Yeah, right. Well, again, things would have probably changed in the past couple of years. They may have changed as well, given the previous attempts on Donald Trump's life. But it would be good to hear whether or not we're going to hear from the Secret Service later today or in the next couple of days, exactly what those arrangements were and where exactly this person was apprehended.
Exactly, and we will hopefully get some more details. We are, as you can see, waiting for a press briefing from, we expect, the US president sometime in the next few minutes. But before we go there, we've heard from an Associated Press employee who was inside the venue when this incident unfolded. They've given a first-hand account a short time ago. Let's take a listen to that.
Sudden the dinner had just started. President and First Lady had just been brought into the room. A few minutes later, people were just in their first course, and there was some sort of loud commotion. Secret Service came running up. They immediately pulled the President and First Lady and Carolyn Leavitt, who were on the dais. They pulled them to safety, and then everybody was laying on the ground. We were all the journalists, all the guests, all the dignitaries were on the ground. Slowly, Secret Service appeared to be clearing the room, looking. It's unclear exactly what happened, but I saw slowly, we saw Marco Rubio, Stephen Miller and his wife, Katie Miller, get pulled out. We also saw Scott Bessent and Energy Secretary Chris Wright also being moved to safety very quickly. Secret Service moved very, very quickly. But right now, we really just don't know what's going on. There was some loud noise, some scuffle of some sort, but what exactly happened to precipitate what happened is, frankly, right now, it's a little bit unclear.
OK, that a correspondent from the Associated Press who is inside the room. Lots more of those reports will continue to come out as the hours progress. As Mel mentioned, we're waiting for the president. The seats there filling up as the correspondents rush from the ballroom over to the White House to hear the president speak. He is currently back in the White House. He is surrounded by his top team, Melania Trump as well. They are no doubt putting together the words that President Trump will speak after what has been a very dramatic night there in Washington, D.C. 3, 4, perhaps 5 shots fired outside the ballroom where the White House Correspondents Dinner was starting. President Trump due to speak at that and then leave actually before the awards were handed out to the correspondents, the news agencies, the news organisations that had all gathered there. Jade McMillan's still with us here in the studio. And Jade, there had been a lot of talk about which journalists were there because, of course, the New York Times doesn't go. It chooses not to cosy up, if you like, with the administration. A lot of controversy about that. But as you watched the event before this happened, it was a very jovial affair.
Yeah, and it normally is. As I was saying earlier, there's normally kind of an atmosphere of the press and the president sort of poking fun at each other. It's this quite extraordinary occasion to have everyone in that one room, and the couple of dinners I attended, the address from the then President Joe Biden certainly sort of hit that tone. There was often usually a comedian as well, and that was kind of considered free rein to make fun of the press and the administration as well. So this was, again, such a highly anticipated event because it's quite unusual to see Donald Trump in a room like this. He didn't attend previously as president. There was that previous year that John Barron was mentioning when, you know, he was made fun of, and some people argue that was perhaps the moment he decided to run. So this was always going to be a really closely watched affair to see what Donald Trump was going to say in his address. Unfortunately, we've seen it cut short in, you know, the worst circumstances, and thankfully it sounds like no one injured, but still a really terrifying moment for everyone who was there.
I'm quite startled, Jade, as well. The confusion afterwards. My first thought, shots have been fired, this is a crime scene, and yet you have all of these people just milling around. Then the suggestion that, no, we're going to go on with the show from the president of the White House Correspondents Dinner. She came on stage and said that, give us a minute, we'll be back. Then clearly Secret Service, the intelligence community got involved and said, there's no way that can happen. Shots have been fired in the same building as the President of the United States. That is not something that can happen. And eventually, they then, probably after 45 minutes after the shots were fired, maybe even an hour, they start filing out the room, as we can see in these pictures. But not before. All the journalists are filed into their news organisations and given live reports. I mean, unprecedented.
Yeah, I mean, I think it sounds like Donald Trump wanted things to proceed. He had said on Truth Social, the shooter has been apprehended and I have recommended that we let the show go on, but will be entirely guided by law enforcement. And it sounds as though the Secret Service has said, no, we are ending this now. There has been a really serious incident here. And whether or not they wanted to keep everyone inside in the situation contained for a period while they figured out whether or not things were safe, because you never know. That the fear is always that, is there another shooter? Are they working in a team? So there may have been some element of that where authorities needed everyone, once they decided that it was safe inside that ballroom, that they needed everyone to remain. But yeah, I mean, Donald Trump suggesting that things go on and then authorities saying no, and we expect now to hear from the President of the White House very shortly.
It's reminiscent, isn't it, Jade, of the previous assassination attempt on the US President in Butler, Pennsylvania during the election campaign when he was shot. He was clipped in the ear by a bullet, and then stood up and started this fight, fight, fight chant. It sort of seems, that the president is determined, like tonight, to let the show go on, determined to show this, this sense of defiance.
Yeah, and I mean, that became arguably the defining moment of Donald Trump's presidential campaign, to have been shot at, and then that immediate aftermath when there is so much confusion and chaos and panic, and he was bleeding from the ear, and to stand up and kind of raise his fist and yell those words, fight, 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 really galvanised his supporters even more so behind him, right ahead of the Republican National Convention where he was being officially confirmed as the nominee. So that is certainly a very enduring image of Donald Trump as a candidate. There was another attempt on his life at a golf club in Florida that was foiled. And again, we don't know exactly what has happened here, who perhaps might have been the target, but the Secret Service would absolutely be taking this as, you know, the most serious threat, and they would be jumping into action as we've seen them do so.
Oh my God. Absolutely, as we can see in these pictures, law enforcement just jumping into action there, and as we saw a little earlier in some of those pictures of the Secret Service running onto the stage, bundling the US president and his wife Melania away. We know now that he and the other dignitaries who were there are back at the White House now, and we are expecting to hear from the US president in the next few minutes or so, and we will of course bring those remarks to you live here on the ABC News channel and on ABC News Radio. But before, I suppose as we wait for this press conference, we're going to bring in Daniel Brunner now, who joins us on the phone or over Zoom. You're a retired FBI agent. Daniel, thank you so much for joining us today. Just explain to us, in your experience, what the security situation would have been tonight at the White House Correspondents Dinner, given the US president was there with so many of his cabinet members and so many members of the press.
Really, you'll have one of the most secure locations in Washington, D.C., definitely, if not the United States. The amount of security that they had there, the amount of preparation they've had for this is the fact that the president and the vice president were both in the same room at the same time, it increases it even more, and making sure that there's nothing that can get nearby. I think that this was security that was built in this situation worked exactly like it's supposed to. They're going to have multiple blocks around the hotel closed off. No vehicles are going to be driving in. That prevents a vehicle-borne explosive device. Then you're going to have layered security as you approach it. I'm sure they had other people looking at individuals that were walking near the hotel, but you can't lock it down because there's just so many different apartment buildings, office buildings. You can't lock down that area, so people can walk around freely around the hotel. And there are obviously hotel guests as well. I'm sure that they were prepared for that. The fact that they appear to have stopped him at the magnetometers is exactly how this security is supposed to work. So I think that they appear to be exactly how they prepared to. A very high security, a very high risk situation, and the Secret Service handled it properly.
Take me through a little bit more, Daniel, about the preparation that would have gone into the security situation ahead of tonight. You talked about there, not being able to lock down the whole area. So I guess what is the limit, I suppose, of the Secret Service's powers here to be able to secure a location like this?
Well, the powers of the Secret Service when you're conducting a security event like the president is very extensive. There's very little that they cannot do. I'm sure they locked down the airspace in the area overhead within a few square miles, so no aircraft could fly around it. I'm sure there were drone detectors to appear to look for drone. There was vehicle-borne blockades. I'm sure they put heavy vehicles blocks away from the hotel. And then there's obviously detectors for biological, chemical, nuclear type of radiation that will be in the area. Those detectors will be out. And these are be put out days in advance because they are aware of the situation. They're aware that this correspondence dinner was going to be occurring at a date and time. So they're preparing this days in advance, making sure everything is secure. And then in anticipation of that, within a few hours, everything gets locked down. Everything is prepared for the Secret Service, gets their layered security up, and they have contingency for situations just like this. If the president needs to be removed from the stage, I'm sure they had a room set up for him. And then if he needed to be evacuated from the hotel very quickly, there's an exit plan. and that exit plan was to get the vehicles out of there as quickly as possible. So there's multiple plans and multiple backup plans if each one of those plans fail.
And so take us through now, Daniel, what would be going through the minds of the security detail now after an incident like this? We're seeing in these pictures almost, what looks like pure chaos of people running through the building. They've taken this alleged shooter down. We understand one person is in custody. What sort of happens now?
Well, this is where it hands off. So the Secret Service has done their job. And what appears to be chaos to most 99% of the world, when I was involved in situations like this was a controlled chaos. We trained for this. We knew what we were doing. We knew the communications we had, and we knew where our places were. Everyone has a place to be. It isn't just 30, 40, Secret Service agents all running around randomly. Each Secret Service agent, each FBI agent, each security, even down to the hotel security, they know their role. They know their position if something happens. Now, this is where the FBI comes in and where an investigation will happen as to who is the shooter, where he was coming from, what was his motive, did he have other accomplices that were assisting him? How did he find out? How did he get so close? So this is where the investigation occurs now. From what I understood, he's a 30-year-old male from California. So how did he get here from California? Was he traveled? So everything is going to be analyzed. His house is going to be searched, I'm sure, very quickly here within the next hour or so. And everything is going to be dissected on his phone, his computer, to find out who he was working with, how did he find out, and what was his motivation into carrying out this attack, and who was his target. We don't know if President Trump was the target. It could have been a correspondent in the audience that he had a problem with, or it could have been somebody else. So these are the things that we need to find out, and the FBI is working on this right now, and they will not be going to sleep for the next 2 to 3 days until this is found out.
Absolutely. A lot more questions to be asked and answered, no doubt. And as our audience can see, we're expecting to hear from the US president and some of his cabinet members from the White House momentarily. You can see, there are correspondents who have obviously come from the dinner straight to the press briefing room there. People still dressed up in their suits and ties and ball gowns, waiting for this press conference from the US president. So we will bring that to our viewers as soon as it gets underway. But Daniel, while we've still got you, I just want to ask you, I suppose, a little bit more about, the response from the Secret Service. We saw they were able to bundle the US president and his wife away quite quickly, similarly to what we saw, 2 years ago when there was the assassination attempt on Donald Trump's life at a rally in Butler, Pennsylvania. Just take us through what sort of changes may have been put in place by the Secret Service since that incident to prevent something like this from happening again. Surely that would have been, that was a very serious incident, and surely there would have been, a bit of a recalibration of, what security protocols are.
And absolutely, you're right. That's perfectly said. That after every single incident, going back to the beginning of the existence of the Secret Service during the Lincoln administration, every time the Secret Service has a failure or a president is attacked or even there's a situation, that failure is analyzed. They look at it and they figure out, why did this happen? Let's make sure it doesn't happen again. So even Butler or the incident in Florida at his golf course, every incident is looked at and found out what failures occurred, and let's make sure it doesn't happen again. Those Secret Service agents were prepared for it. They trained for it. As you could see, both there were Secret Service agents and the Uniform Division. Those are two separate groups. The Secret Service agents that everyone sees in the movies, those are the ones that are in the suits. Their job is to get the president off of what's called the X. Get him out of that position and moved out of that position, get their bodies in the way. And then you have the Uniform Division. Those are the ones that had the guns out and the uniforms and the helmets. Those are the ones that got on stage very quickly. And you'll see also 2 of those uniform divisions got in the way between the audience and the President of the United States, because that's where the threat was coming from. The sound of the gunfire was coming from the lobby, so they had to get between them and allow the Secret Service agents to get the president off of the X and move him out of that situation until it could be further assessed. And they did a very good job at it, making sure that the president was secure, move him to a room, find out what's going on. Then the law enforcement made the decision to shut down the dinner.
Daniel, it's Jade McMillan joining Melissa on the desk here. Thank you for your time. Give us a sense of what you'd expect from the investigation now. We're getting reports from the Associated Press that the FBI interviewed guests as they were leaving the ballroom as tables were being cleared. What kind of job is ahead of law enforcement now as they investigate this incident?
Well, they need to find out everything there is to know, because obviously where all those guests are is the best place for them to be, and also is fresh in their minds. If those reporters or guests of the reporters, or everyone there attending the dinner, they go home, the memories start to fade, and they are all right there, and then FBI agents have to go find them. This is the perfect situation. I know of a CNN reporter that was 4 feet away from the shooter apparently, and he was able to give information that he saw, and I'm sure he was interviewed by the FBI. What did you see? Who was, what did you hear? All these things all factor into the investigation, whether it be a Secret Service agent who conducted the interview or an FBI agent. All of this is going to the FBI. This is a federal investigation now that the FBI will be doing. Secret Service will be assisting them in providing them the information that was occurring in interviews, all those things. But each one of those people, some of them may have been a witness, or some of them may have recorded something. Some of them may have seen the shooter an hour earlier. I may have seen this. These are all the things that are important. As little as one person's statement could factor a very big part of a 1,000-piece jigsaw puzzle, which this investigation could be. But they have to make sure everything is in put together correctly, but make sure that everything this is perfect place for all witnesses to come forward and say, did you see something? And give the information to the FBI.
And you would imagine in a room full of journalists and everybody has a mobile phone, there would be photographs, video footage that could form part of that evidence as well.
Absolutely. And that is, as far as we've seen, going back, obviously, in today's digital media world, going back to the Boston bombing and obviously the shooting at Brown University and all the Butler shooting and the Charlie Kirk shooting, everyone's got their videos out. And one of the things the FBI does very good at is digital analysis. What they'll do most likely is put out a website and say, if you saw something or if you'll see something, send this to our this website, upload the video, provide us who your name, information are, and give us the video from your cell phone, whether it be photograph or cellular video. They're going to also canvass all the hotels in the area. Where the Hilton is, this is Washington, D.C. There are cameras everywhere, private cameras, Ring doorbell cameras, cameras protecting buildings, because this is part of downtown D.C., Washington, D.C., that there are high rises everywhere, and every single building has security cameras. So they're going to go canvass those buildings, can give me the video, and they're going to backtrack to see where this individual is coming from. So this digital TV in today's world in 2026, it's incredibly important to providing us the details as to where he came from. The Luigi Mangione shooting we were able to determine what his direction of travel was after he conducted the shooting, and then we were able to piece together his direction of travel and appear that he was going into New Jersey to Pennsylvania. So those are all important pieces of the investigation, and the FBI is one of the best in the world to conduct the digital analysis.
Daniel Brunner, retired FBI agent, thank you very much for your time. We really appreciate it.
My pleasure.
Well, we are waiting to hear from the US president, who's expected to give a press conference from the White House any moment now, really expected to address this security incident that has interrupted the White House Correspondents Dinner in Washington, D.C. tonight. Just to recap, what we know so far is that 4 or 5 shots were fired, believed to be from outside the ballroom where the White House Correspondents Dinner was being being held. You can see the moment here when shots were heard and, chaos unfolded after that. The US president bundled away along with many of his dignitaries. Some 2,500 people were in the room at the time of this shooting. Guests had just been seated before the Secret Service flooded the room, yelling for people to get down. Donald Trump, the US president, and his cabinet were rushed from the ballroom and taken to safety. We understand one person is in custody. There are reports that it is a 30-year-old man from California. We are, however, expecting to hear more details from the US president and other authorities in just a few moments, and we will bring that to you live here on the ABC News channel. I'm Melissa McKay. I'm joined by our former US Bureau Chief Jade McMillan on the desk here. We're going to head to Washington, D.C. now, though, where our America's editor John Lyons joins us. John was in the room at the time. John, just take us through those moments where we've just seen those pictures of hearing those gunshots and seeing the chaos unfold in that room. What was that like for you?
Well, Melissa, let me just set the scene. There's about 2,500 people came to the Washington Hilton just up the hill here. Now, this is also the hotel where the famous scenes we saw many years ago of then President Ronald Reagan, the assassination attempt on him, happened just up there in the driveway. What happened tonight was, as Jade said before, having been Bureau Chief, this is like the major event of the year. In fact, the Australian Embassy, the British Embassy, the European Union all have events leading up to this in previous nights. So 2,500 people, a lot of the most powerful, most influential people in the United States, owners of media organisations, editors, executive producers, and then you had significant elements of the Trump administration in the room. You had both the president and vice president on stage, Caroline Leavitt on stage. Then through the room, through these hundreds of tables, I was at table 244, but all around you I walked out to in the hallway, and there's the Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent. I went to the bathroom and I'm washing my hands next to Stephen Miller, who is Donald Trump's immigration czar, and there's RFK Jr. So they were all through the room, and then the President Trump and the First Lady came out, stood up. There was the national anthem. President Trump saluted through that, which he doesn't always do, and then everyone sat down. The head of the White House Correspondents Association, the CBS correspondent, she got up and welcomed everybody and then said, now please begin your meals. And it was about 10 or 15 minutes into it when suddenly you hear this enormous shouting and kerfuffle and people shouting down, down. And I looked at the people in front of me because I was just at the top of a little 3 or 4 stairs, and they were all diving under the table. And not everyone at our table heard that. It was...
John, we're just going to interrupt you there to bring our viewers to the White House, where the US president is approaching the podium there in the press briefing room.
That was very unexpected, but incredibly acted upon by Secret Service and law enforcement. And this was an event dedicated to freedom of speech that was supposed to bring together members of both parties with members of the press, and in a certain way it did, because the fact that they just unified, I saw a room that was just totally unified. It was in one way a very beautiful thing to see. A man charged a security checkpoint armed with multiple weapons, and he was taken down by some very brave members of Secret Service, and they acted very quickly and have just released, for purposes of transparency, clarity, I've ordered it to be put out. You probably have it by now. Put out on Truth and put out on many other platforms. A tape showing the violence of this thug that attacked our Constitution, and also showing how quickly Secret Service and law enforcement acted on our country's behalf. Really did a great job. One officer was shot, but saved by the fact that He was wearing obviously a very good bulletproof vest. He was shot from very close distance with a very powerful gun, and the vest did the job. I just spoke to the officer, and he's doing great. He's in great shape. He has very high spirits, and we told him we love him and respect him, and he's a very proud guy. He's very proud of what he does, Secret Service agent. And we looked at all of the conditions that took place tonight, and I will say, you know, it's not a particularly secure building. And I didn't want to say this, but this is why we have to have all of the attributes of what we're planning at the White House. It's actually a larger room, and it's much more secure. It's drone-proof, it's bulletproof glass. We need the ballroom. That's why Secret Service, that's why the military are demanding it. They've wanted the ballroom for 150 years for lots of different reasons, but today's a little bit different because today we need levels of security that probably nobody's ever seen before. But everyone owes a tremendous debt of gratitude to the courage of law enforcement, the law enforcement, and working with the D.C. police. And we just spoke with the mayor. And when we're finished, the police chief is going to take over and discuss it also from their viewpoint. But they also performed exactly as they were supposed to. And you see the attacker in different positions, but you also see the attacker totally subdued and under control. So as you know, this is not the first time in the past couple of years that our republic has been attacked by a would-be assassin who sought to kill. In Butler, Pennsylvania, less than 2 years ago, you all know that story. And in Palm Beach, Florida, a few months after that, we came close. We really had, again, we had some great work done by law enforcement. But in light of this evening's events, I asked that all Americans recommit with their hearts in resolving our difference peacefully. We have to resolve our differences. I will say, you had Republicans, Democrats, independents, conservatives, liberals, and progressives. Those words are interchangeable, perhaps, but maybe they're not. But yet everybody in that room, big crowd, record-setting crowd. There was a record-setting group of people. And there was a tremendous amount of love and coming together. I watched, and I was very, very impressed by that. But First Lady and I were taken very well care of, very quickly rushed off the stage. Vice President J.D. Vance, who's here, was likewise beautifully done. He was just saying how quickly everybody acted, law enforcement, Secret Service in particular in this case, but law enforcement. Marco had the same thing. Pete was there. Pete didn't want any help. He didn't want anybody to help him. He doesn't want anybody to help him, but he did get some, didn't you? And I think you also said that it was very impressive. So with that, I'd like to ask Todd Blanche to come up, say a few words, and tell you it's already underway. The man has been captured. They're going to his apartment. I guess he lives in California, and he's a sick person, a very sick person, and we don't want things like this to happen. I think it's very important that I say, though, and I told the representatives of the evening, they did such a beautiful job. It was such a beautiful evening. And again, they're talking about free speech in our Constitution. That's what it's all about, not just White House Correspondents. It was really based on free speech in our Constitution. But I said very importantly that we'll do it again within the next 30 days, and we'll make it bigger and better and even nicer. So I just want to thank everybody that was involved. I also want to thank the press, the media. You've been very responsible in your coverage. I will say I've been seeing what's been out, and you've been very responsible. So Todd Blanche, I'd like to say a few words, and then we're going to have cash. And then you're going to go on. We can ask, I guess we can take a couple of questions. I want to thank the First Lady that was a rather traumatic experience for her. There was a lot of action taking place up there very quickly. But again, the response time was really incredible. And we're going to reschedule. We're going to do it again. We're not going to let anybody take over our society. We're not going to cancel things out because we can't do that. We wanted to stay tonight. I will tell you, I fought like hell to stay. But it was protocol. They said, please, sir, because they didn't know there was a lot of action going on, and they didn't know could there be probably a lone shooter, but we'll find out. We'll find out very quickly. They have it very well under control. So I want to thank everybody very much. And Todd Blanche, please.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Tonight you saw the very worst and the very best of this country. You saw the very worst by the actions of that coward that the president just talked about. But you also saw the very best because you saw law enforcement do exactly what they're supposed to do. And you'll see the videos come out, I expect, very shortly, and you'll see law enforcement do exactly what we want them to do. And so I echo what what President Trump just said, that we are extraordinarily grateful and appreciative of the men and women of law enforcement that did their jobs tonight, including one who was injured. This investigation is ongoing. I expect you will see charges filed shortly. The charges should be self-evident given the conduct, but as you'll hear, there will be multiple charges surrounding the shooting, around the possession of firearms, and anything else that we can get on this guy. The investigation is obviously ongoing and just started. There is federal law enforcement already working on search warrants and doing their job, and I don't want to get ahead of them and don't want to get ahead of the work that they're doing even as we speak. Director Patel and I were just on the crime scene a short while ago, and everybody in this room should rest assured that the Metropolitan Police Department, the FBI, Secret Service, everybody's on the scene doing their job. I know that the police chief is going to give an update from the scene as soon as we're finished here, and I obviously will lead the details of what they have learned to him. But in the meantime, I just want to thank everybody in this room for the courage. And I want to thank President Trump for his words, and I promise you, justice will be served. Thank you. Director Patel.
Thank you, General. Thank you, Mr. President. The President's absolutely right. You saw the best resolve of American law enforcement because you, Mr. President, inspire them 24/7, 365. You give them the resources that they need, and they know that you have their back. And that is a changing dynamic in this country, and that's why you saw brave Secret Service agents respond immediately, swiftly, subdue and take down the suspect, and safeguard the lives of thousands of individuals at that hotel. Thanks to our interagency partnership with the Department of Homeland Security and the Metropolitan Police Department, the FBI was rapidly deployed onto the scene, took over the evidence response unit, is examining all the ballistics that were found on scene to include the long gun and the shell casings. We are conducting witness interviews as we speak. You will hear from our team on the scene there with the mayor and the head of the FBI field division there. But please know what the Attorney General has just said reigns no truer. You saw the very best of America tonight. The very best unite us at a time of uncertainty, because we have leadership here with the President and the Vice President that backs law enforcement, and the men and women that I shook their hands on the scene today could not have been prouder to show up on scene. And as the Attorney General said, make no mistake, we are conducting witness interviews. If you have any information whatsoever related to this event, 1-800-CALL-FBI. 1-800-CALL-FBI. No piece of information is too small. No piece of information is inadequate. We will evaluate it all. We will also be conducting interviews of those that were there. And if any of those individuals have information, please come forward to law enforcement or the FBI or the Metropolitan Police Department. We will be examining this individual's background thoroughly. That process has already started. And we are going to ensure that he was either a lone wolf actor or anyone else that was responsible. We will analyze all evidence immediately to make sure that we safeguard this country. Mr. President, Mr. Vice President, thank you for your leadership. Attorney General and Homeland Secretary Marlin, thank you for your partnership in law enforcement.
Thank you. Okay, we'll do a couple and then we go to the chair. Madam Chairman, I just want to say you did a fantastic job. What a beautiful evening, and we're going to reschedule. And after that, it's very tough for her to ask a killer question, right? But you have done a fantastic job. Please.
Mr. President, I appreciate it. As you mentioned, it all happened so quickly, and I wonder, especially because unfortunately you have experience with these sorts of threats, in that moment when you realized there was a threat and service agents were telling us to get down. Can you describe what was going through your mind, how you were feeling in that moment?
That's a very good question, actually. It's always shocking when something like this happens. It's happened to me a little bit, and that never changes. The fact, we were sitting right next to each other, First Lady on my right, and I heard a noise and sort of thought it was a tray. I thought it was a tray going down. You know, I've heard that many times, and it was a pretty loud noise. And it was from quite far away. He hadn't breached the area at all. They really got him. But so it was quite far away, but it was a gun. And some people really understood that pretty quickly. Other people didn't. I was watching to see what was happening. Probably should have gone down even faster. Melania was very cognizant, I think, of what happened. I think she knew immediately what happened. She was saying, "That's a bad noise." And we were whisked away along with other people, but we were really whisked away. And again, the performance of the Secret Service and the police, all of the law enforcement, I thought was really good. So it was very quick. There wasn't a lot of time to be thinking, because it was a matter of seconds before we were out the door and gone into an area. We very much, and you wanted to too, we very much wanted to continue it, because I don't like to let these sick people, these thugs, these horrible, horrible people, change the fabric of our life, change the course of what we do. So we held out. You were there. We held out right till the end, but they didn't want to take a chance, and I understand there was protocol. But we're going to be doing one hopefully within the next 30 days or sooner, and I am ready, willing, and able, and I was all set to really rip it. And I said to my people, this would be the most inappropriate speech ever made if I said one. So I'll have to save it. I don't know if I could ever be as rough as I was going to be tonight. I think I'm going to be probably very nice. I'll be very boring the next time, but we're going to have a great event. And you did a fantastic job. Thank you very much. Peter, go ahead.
Thank you, President Trump. There's a report in the New York Post that this assailant assembled his weapon somewhere on site at the hotel. What do you think about that? And I ask respectfully, why do you think this keeps happening to you?
Well, you know, I've studied assassinations, and I must tell you, the most impactful people, the people that do the most, you take a look at the people, Abraham Lincoln, I mean, you go through the people that have gone through this where they got them, but the people that do the most, the people that make the biggest impact, they're the ones that they go after. They don't go after the ones that don't do much because they like it that way. And when you look at the people that have either, whether it was an attempt or a successful attempt, they're very impactful people. Just take a look at the names there, the big names. And I hate to say I'm honored by that, but I've done a lot. We've done a lot. We've taken this country, and we were a laughingstock for years, and now we're the hottest country anywhere in the world. We've changed this country. And there are a lot of people that are not happy about that. So I think that's the answer, Peter.
And after Butler, your team for a while rethought outdoor events.
Yeah.
Do you think that you now need to rethink
No.
indoor
Well,
events?
but then you just don't do events. No, I can't do that. I have to. It is what it is. We have to do it. The room was very, very secure. You know, he charged from 50 yards away, so he was very far away from the room.
And what did you think when you saw the video of how fast he was running?
He was moving. He was really moving. And the reaction time was great. Boy, those guys, they had their guns drawn literally by the time he was there. They were shooting.
That's right.
I thought they were very impressive. And if I didn't, I'd let you know. You know, I'm not going to be, I would not stand for that. No, I thought they were very impressive.
Thank you, President Trump, and thank you for updating us on the suspect earlier. Were you aware of any threats? Was your team aware of any threats beforehand? And do you believe you were the target of this tonight?
I guess. I mean, these people they're crazy. They're crazy, and you know, you never know. He was very far away from me. He had to go through a lot. We had resources all over. We had resources sitting at tables, literally in disguise, sitting maybe at your table, who knows? But we had people all over the room, so he had a long way to go. That was really a first line of defense, and they got him. and they really, they acted incredibly. No, there was no notification. We had no idea. Go ahead, Kevin.
Do you know any political motivations from this?
Well, you never know. No, we'll be able to tell you that maybe by tomorrow or the next day. He's in custody, and they're asking him a lot of questions. I guess they're going over, Todd, and they're already at his apartment. He lives in California.
Yes, sir.
And they're over there, so they'll be able to tell you. Thank you, Caitlin.
President Trump, did the suspect say anything, or was he wearing anything that would allege some type of motive here?
Nothing. No, I mean, he was a guy who looked pretty evil when he was down. They had him down. He was fighting hard. He was in my opinion, a sick person. Who would do that but a sick person? But I think you're going to find everything about him. No reason to talk about it now. But tomorrow at this time, long before this time, you're going to know a lot of things about him. They seem to think he was a lone wolf, and I feel that too.
Are you concerned about U.S. Secret Service protection ability? We saw several of the detailees take minutes to be escorted out of the room.
No, they acted very quickly. No, I was very impressed by Secret Service. I'm the one, and Mark Wayne, you would agree with that, I think. Absolutely. I'm the one that would complain. You don't have to complain for me. I would be complaining. I'd be up here right now saying they didn't do their job. Oh, believe me, because, it's my life. And I want to live because I want to make this country great. That's why I want to live. But when you're impactful, they go after you. When you're not impactful, they leave you alone. Okay, a couple of more. Go ahead, please.
Is there any indication that this shooting could have been linked to the war in Iran?
I don't think so, but you never know. We're going to know a lot. We have the best people in the world working on it, and we're going to know a lot. Please.
Mr. President, there's a lot. There's you, as well as some of us who have covered Butler, experienced another horrific day 2 years ago.
Yeah.
What felt similar? You had the First Lady with you today. What felt different? And you have another 2+ years in office. Are you concerned about something like this happening
Well, I
again?
can't be concerned. I can only get great people. They did the job, in my opinion, a much better job than Butler. Butler had one weak spot that we all know about. Somebody should have been up there. But even Butler, we had our sniper on our side within 4.2 seconds from a distance of about 400 yards, one shot, and he was gone. And if he didn't do it now, he's David. His name was David. I say, hello, David, every time I see him. David, I like you very much, David. But think of that. Now, if he doesn't hit him, and he hit him right between the eyes from 400 yards without any notice, nobody knew. He heard a sound. He looked over, and there was actually a tree that was somewhat in his way. You know the story very well. And he aimed, he fired. And if he didn't do that, beyond me, you would have had a lot more people killed. We lost one great person and 2 people very badly hurt. They're okay now. But no, that was so. In a sense, that was pretty amazing the job they did. But they did have that one weak spot, as you know. They should have had that covered. Tonight they had everything covered very quickly, and he was fast. He was running full blast, and they got him before they got any further. I was very far away. He hadn't anywhere close to breach the doors of the ballroom. The ballroom was sealed, and everybody in there. That's why once those doors opened, they didn't want to do tonight. If the doors weren't opened, we could have probably done it tonight, but I think we're much better off rescheduling. Yeah, please.
Mr. President, for you and perhaps law enforcement as well, what is the level of confidence that this was a lone actor, and has the suspect made any statements to police while in custody?
Yeah, I think it's just my profession. We have great professionals up here and outside that have been working with us. My impression is he was a lone wolf, whack job. These are crazy people. And they have to be dealt with. We had that in the second attempt, as you know, and he's spending life in prison. Because if you let him out, they'll probably, if he serves 10 years or 15 years, you let him out, he'll probably try it again with somebody else. They're sick people. We have a lot of sick people. But you're going to know, I think very shortly, you're going to know, Todd, a lot about him. You're going to know a lot about him. Yeah, a couple of more.
Mr. President.
Yeah, please, go ahead.
Are you concerned about
political violence, this could be politically motivated?
All violence. I'm concerned about everything. Look, but I can't be so concerned that you can't function. No, I'm here. It's a dangerous profession. You know, I tell the story, race car drivers, I think it's very dangerous. So if you take 1% and then take about 10% of 1%, just to break it down very easily, they die. So much less than 1%, 10% of 1%. I think bull riding is very dangerous. If you take about the same 10% of 1%, much less than 1%, but if you take presidents, it's 5.8%, and about 8% are shot at. So nobody told me this was such a dangerous profession. If Marco would have told me, maybe I wouldn't have run. Maybe I would have said, I'll take a pass. No, it's a dangerous profession, but I don't view it that way. Look, I'm here to do a job. It's part of the job. It is a dangerous, I can't imagine that there's any profession that's more dangerous. But I love the country, and I'm very proud. I'm very proud of the job we've done. You see what's happened. We have a great country. We've got, I think, the most successful, the hottest country anywhere in the world. This happened over a period of just a year, and we're going to do great things. But with that come risks. There's no question about it. Yeah.
To that end, I mean, there's been so much political violence, not just aimed at yourself, but at other members of Congress, state house speakers, you name it. Is that just the cost of doing business to do politics in America anymore?
Yeah, well,
what does that say about our country?
Too. We're not the only country. You look at this great violence with all countries. I was talking to somebody from another country today, and they have numerous assassinations of political figures all over the world. You look at South America, it's like some of the numbers are just horrific. It's dangerous. It's dangerous stuff, whether it's here or someplace else. No country is immune. No country. Good question.
Possible to turn that temperature down at this point?
Well, probably if I decided to just not do much, if I let everybody rip us off and take advantage of us. Look, we're leading the world in trade now. We're leading the world in the military. We're the greatest military in the world. I rebuilt it in my first term, and now we use it because we have no choice. We can't let, as an example, Iran, we can't let them get a nuclear weapon. Everything will be peanuts compared to that if they ever were given a nuclear weapon, and they'd use it too. Marco and I were talking about it today. They would use it without even hesitation. We can't do that. It was a shame. I said, oh boy, look at the numbers. We just broke 50,000 in the Dow. We just broke 7,000 in the S&P. They said we couldn't do it in 7 years, in 5 years, 4 years. They were saying maybe in 5 or 6 years. And we did it in 1 year. And I called everybody together. I called all of these people and others, and I said, we have to take a little journey. I say to do this. We just had the great number. We just broke 50,000. Wasn't supposed to happen during my term. Wasn't reachable. We did it in 1 year, and I said, we're going to have to make a journey to Iran. They're going to have a nuclear weapon if we don't do it. We had the B-2 bombers take them out. I terminated in the first term the Obama agreement, the Iran nuclear agreement, which was a disaster. That was a road to a nuclear weapon. They would have used it. They would have used it 100%. So, when you do things like that, you become a target. If I wasn't doing that, I guess I'd be a lot less of a target. But I'm honored to be. Okay, one more question. Go ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
Thank you, President Trump. Thank you, President Trump. Do you know how the gun was brought into the hotel? And also, how does this event impact you as the leader of our country? Do you think it will change your
I
leadership?
like not to think about it. I lead a pretty normal life, considering it's a dangerous life. I think I handle it as well as it can be handled. I think a lot of other people, you read stories where they become basket cases. To be honest with you, I'm not a basket case. I really take it as it is. I do it for the country. I'm not doing it for any other reason. I have a first lady who's doing a terrific job. She loves the country, and she recognizes it better than anybody. She's told me numerous times. She said, you are in a dangerous job. But that goes along with her, too. I mean, it's dangerous for her, too. We sat there tonight. We heard that noise, and it was either a tray or a bullet. I was hoping it was a tray, but it wasn't. And again, We had some very brave people doing a great job, so we're very proud of them and happy with them. I just want to thank everybody. They will be able to give you all that information as to the names and everything else. I think we released the names already. Most of you would have it, but his name. We appreciate it. I see so many tuxedos and beautiful dresses. It was a little different evening than we thought, but we're going to do it again, and we have a great chairman who we're so proud of, and we have to make it better. We'll make it safer, I guess, right? But we're going to make it even better. Okay, thank you very much. Thank you.
President Trump, can we hear from the First Lady about how impactful this was? Can we hear from her about...
Well, honey, would you want to say something?
Okay.
One in the back.
One in the back,
Millions of people across the globe, in fact, are watching you. You demonstrated courageous leadership, and thank God you're alive. All of us are alive today. What is the message that you want to give to the world that this should change? What corrective measures can we take from here on?
Well, all you can do, look, I don't care how many people you have, how good they are. They can be the greatest people. You have the greatest security in history. If you have a whack job who's got a brain, but it's a little bit distorted or a lot distorted, they can make trouble. I would say, Pete, right? You know, they can make trouble. Some of these people are of genius level IQ, and they're nuts. So it can be trouble. So you do absolutely the best. You get the best. We have the best people. Well, look, it was proven tonight. He started running from 50 yards, and he was fast. He was like a blur on tape. He was moving. It was very impressive the way they got him, because a lot of people would be looking and saying, you know, it's like a weird feeling, and they would let him get through, but they didn't let him get through. They drew those guns so fast. They looked like Matt Dillon. They looked like somebody that knew what they were doing. And what do we do? But it comes with the territory. And if you want to do a great job, I really believe that. And you take a look at what's happened to some of our greatest presidents, and it doesn't happen to people that don't do anything. And it's not going to deter me from winning the war in Iran. I don't know if that had anything to do with it. I really don't think so, based on what we know. But we're going to continue to do a great job. That's all I can do. Thank you very much. We'll see you tomorrow. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay.
All right, that was the US President Donald Trump giving a briefing to the White House press room after an incident earlier this evening, Washington, D.C. time, at the White House Correspondents Dinner. A man charged a security checkpoint, we heard there, armed with multiple weapons. He was brought down by Secret Service agents at the White House Correspondents Dinner. We understand 4 or 5 shots were heard being fired outside that room. There was about 2,500 people inside the ballroom at the Hilton in Washington, D.C. Sitting down to the White House Correspondents' Dinner, usually quite a jovial affair, Jade, where the media sits down and, you know, is alongside the press, alongside the US President and members of the cabinet. We've heard there that one member of one officer was shot. He was wearing a bulletproof vest, though, and the US President said there that he is doing great. We understand one person is in custody, believed to be a man from California, and is expected to be charged. Pictures of the man have been released by the US President on social media. We heard there from the acting Attorney General, Todd Blanche, who said that multiple charges are expected to be filed soon, both in relation to the shooting and weapons charges. Now, we've seen this video as well, which has been released by the White House as well, which appears to show the shooter or the alleged shooter running through the running through towards the ballroom and being taken down by the Secret Service and members of security there. Jade, this is quite an extraordinary event to have taken place. Just take us through what we're sort of seeing in this video here.
Yeah, so this is video that has been released by the President Donald Trump on his Truth social media platform. It appears to show this man racing through a security checkpoint. It's not clear to me exactly where this is in relation to the ballroom at the hotel where the White House Correspondents Dinner was taking place, but it appears as though those officers there have reacted very quickly, and off camera they have swarmed this man. In the process of that, I'm guessing, or perhaps it was earlier, one officer has been shot, but Donald Trump said that he was wearing a bulletproof vest, that has done its job, and that officer is okay. We saw those photos as well that the president released of the man being apprehended. He's in custody at the moment. It's quite late in Washington, D.C. at the moment, about 11 p.m. And so the president's saying that it may not be until tomorrow local time that we learn what charges have been laid or what the alleged motivation might have been. Donald Trump was asked whether he believed he was being targeted. He said, I guess, but that wasn't confirmed or completely clear. He was also asked whether the president thought this incident had anything to do with the war in Iran. He said he didn't think so. Donald Trump was also asked, it was interesting, I think it was the very first question to him in that press briefing, about how he felt in that moment, given that this is a man who has been the subject of an assassination attempt in the past. We can't forget that incident in Butler, Pennsylvania, during the campaign trail when Donald Trump was shot at, a bullet grazing his ear, someone in the crowd killed at that rally. Donald Trump said that, he wasn't sure what was happening at first, that his first thought was that a tray had been dropped. This was a dinner that was taking place in a very crowded ballroom. But he said people very quickly began to understand what was going on, that the First Lady, Melania Trump, recognised very quickly that this was a very serious situation and that they were whisked away very quickly.
Absolutely, Donald Trump there at that press conference, very grateful and thankful, praising the Secret Service and first responders there. You can see these are pictures from a little earlier this evening, DC time, from the White House, from the Correspondents' Dinner when the incident unfolded. You are with ABC News. I'm Melissa McKay. I'm joined by our former US Bureau Chief Jade McMillan at the desk here with our ongoing coverage of a security incident at the White House Correspondents' Dinner in Washington, D.C., where the US President Donald Trump was attending. We're going to take you back to Washington, D.C. now, where police are providing an update on that incident from a little earlier today.
All right. Are we ready, guys? Start. Okay.
Good evening. I'm Muriel Bowser. I'm the mayor of Washington, D.C. I am joined by members of my public safety team and federal law enforcement, including the United States Attorney for the District of Columbia, Janine Pirro, the Secret Service Director, Sean Curran, as well as FBI Field Office, Darren Cox. We're here to provide you an update on the incident that took place tonight at 8:36 p.m. at the Washington Hilton at the site of the White House Correspondents' Dinner. At about that time, a sole gunman rushed a Secret Service checkpoint in a lobby at the hotel. Secret Service agents stopped the suspect. An agent was injured and transported to a local hospital where the agent is receiving care. The suspect is also transported to a local hospital where he is being evaluated. The president returned safely to the White House, as you know. We are so very thankful to members of law enforcement who did their jobs tonight and made sure that all guests were safe. We have no reason to believe at this time that anyone else was involved. I want to turn to the Chief of the Metropolitan Police Department, Chief Carroll, to provide a law enforcement update and specifics.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Again, I'm Jeff Carroll, Interim Chief of Police for the Metropolitan Police Department. This afternoon, this evening, members of the United States Secret Service and the Metropolitan Police Department were here at the Washington Hotel for a site detail for the Correspondents Dinner. As the mayor mentioned, at approximately 8:36 tonight, an individual charged a U.S. Secret Service checkpoint here in the lobby area of the hotel. He was armed with a shotgun, a handgun, and multiple knives. As he ran through that checkpoint, members of law enforcement from the United States Secret Service intercepted that individual. This is a very preliminary investigation at this point. We do know that law enforcement exchanged gunfire with the individual. We do know that a U.S. Secret Service uniformed division officer was struck in his vest. He was transported to a local hospital for treatment. He seems to be in good spirits at this time. The suspect in this case, he was not struck by gunfire. However, he was transported to a local hospital to be evaluated. Again, we're very early in the investigation. We have members of the United States Secret Service, the Metropolitan Police Department, and the FBI here to continue to investigate this matter. But at this point, it does appear he is a lone actor, a lone gunman. There does not appear to be any sort of danger to the public at this time. However, we are continuing to investigate this matter. At this point, I will turn it over to, I believe, the FBI.
Hi, good evening. I'm Darren Cox. I'm the Assistant Director in charge of the FBI's Washington Field Office. The American public should be proud of the quick response and heroic actions from law enforcement officers tonight to keep the American public safe. Their actions are absolutely heroic. The public should also rest assured that there will be no stone unturned during this investigation. The FBI currently has our Joint Terrorism Task Force here on scene, along with our Criminal Division, our Crisis Response Team, and agents from across the country are working on any leads that may come in this investigation. Anyone with tips in this investigation should call 1-800-CALL-FBI. Thank you.
Director Kern.
Thank you. My name is Sean Kern. I'm the Director of the Secret Service. Tonight, we saw exactly what our brave men and women do each and every day to protect our protectees. It's not easy, and I will tell you that they performed admirably. We got to see what they do, and that individual, when he charged a checkpoint, was apprehended. It shows that our multi-layered protection works, and I'm grateful to our partners that help assist us with building these sites and protecting these sites. Very fortunate that this officer is alive, is being observed, and I'm grateful that the President reached out to this officer and spoke with him earlier. I ask everybody to pray for him and all of our officers and agents that were involved, and I will tell you, we will continue with the mission. Thank you.
Thank you. Judge Shapiro.
I'm Janine Pirro. I'm the United States Attorney. Right now, the defendant is being charged with 2 counts, 924C, using a firearm during a crime of violence, and a second crime under 111, which is assault on a federal officer using a dangerous weapon. Now, as you all know, there was an individual, a uniformed Secret Service officer, who was shot. And fortunately, he is doing all right and he will be fine. But it is clear, based upon what we know so far, that this individual was intent on doing as much harm and as much damage as he could. And thankfully, because of the checkpoint right outside the ballroom, where thousands of people were situated to hear the President of the United States. Because that checkpoint worked, there was no one who was injured when it was clear where this defendant was going. Now, I want to make one comment. As a participant, someone who was in the ballroom, who came this evening to be part of a very lovely event at the White House Correspondents Dinner, I, for the first time, was in a situation where there were shots fired, shots heard, and a whole room went silent. When I lifted my head and when I looked up, every law enforcement officer was out there as we all had our heads down, thousands of them. These are the men and women every day who do what they do silently, and they do it with courage and with dignity. Thank God for our partners, the FBI, the Secret Service, the Metropolitan Police. All of them tonight acted so quickly that they prevented what could have been a horrific event where we were all sitting there in one room. The defendant will be arraigned on Monday in federal district court. But make no mistake, there will be many more charges based upon the information that we are learning in this very fluid situation. Thank you.
I'll take a few questions. Right here in the front, right here in the front.
Can you confirm that this suspect is specifically targeting the president, and is he talking to law enforcement now?
Chief.
Sure. So at this point, what we know is we know the individual charged the checkpoint with a firearm in his hand. We know he was running in the direction of the ballroom that the president was in, as well as other cabinet members. So what his specific motivation was, we can't say at this point. However, as we continue to investigate that, we'll continue to work towards that.
Chief, when you say there seems to have been a lack of authorization to come to this event. Was this a failure on the Secret Service?
What we have here is a multi-layered approach. The director spoke about it. We have officers on the outside from the Metropolitan Police Department along with the escort. The inside portion of any presidential site is handled by the Secret Service and law enforcement partners. This is a multi-layered approach. The point of this checkpoint is to intercept individuals that were there, and what we see in this case is when he reached that checkpoint, Secret Service agents and law enforcement engaged him immediately. They were able to bring him into custody and prevent anyone from being harmed.
Chief Carroll, right here.
Chief Carroll, can you tell us if you found a vehicle associated with the suspect, and are you or the FBI conducting any search warrants either on a vehicle or locations here or elsewhere around the country?
Sure, Mark. So as you can imagine, this is very early in the investigation. So, things we're looking into is his background, vehicles. Those are all things that the FBI, the Metropolitan Police Department, and the Secret Service are working together jointly to determine, is there anything else that's available? So I would imagine as we continue to go through this investigation, there will be additional search warrants and things of that nature as the investigation progresses.
Is the suspect known to law enforcement?
At this point, he was not known to the Metropolitan Police Department, I can tell you that.
Right here?
There are multiple other parties and events happening associated with this weekend tonight. Is there any reason to believe that there will be security concerns at those events? Are there preparations being made locally to protect those attendees?
Yeah, absolutely not. So we have no indication. This is an isolated incident with one individual is the information that we do have. However, we do have additional officers across the city that are giving special attention. We do know there were some after parties and events that are planned that we will be providing coverage for those events.
Yep, right here.
The president said that this is not a particularly secure building. Do you agree with that assessment?
I'm not exactly 100% familiar with this building. I do know in this incident tonight, I know there was a security plan that was developed by the Secret Service that the Metropolitan Police Department assisted with, and I know that security plan did work this evening.
Right here.
Thank you so much. Do you know specifically if President Trump was a target of this attack? And can you speak to their reporting about the suspect assembling a long weapon to get into the ballroom? Can you speak to that at all?
Yes, so as we said before, we do know the president was inside the ballroom. We know there was cabinet members and many guests in there. Who specifically he was targeting at this point, that's part of the investigation. We do know that he was armed with a shotgun when he ran through that checkpoint, so that would look like a long weapon in video.
All right, right here.
To clarify, earlier you said there was an exchange of gunfire. Did the suspect fire any shots, and did the uniformed officer, do you know yet which weapon he was shot?
Yeah, obviously we're only a couple hours into this incident, so we don't have that level of information. The FBI's evidence response team is here. They're processing the scene, so as the investigation develops, all that information will be figured out with the ballistics. The ATF is also on scene here with us.
So the suspect did or did not fire a shot?
Sure. So again, it's very preliminary information. We do believe he did. However, as the investigation determines, we'll pull the shell casings. We'll be able to get more information as we review more evidence. We're very early in the investigation.
All right, we can take a couple more right here, and one more over here.
Thank you so much. So the president said that he wants there to be another event within 30 days. Given what happened tonight, do you have any sense of what additional security measures might be put in place to ensure that something similar does not happen again?
Sure. I'll toss it to the Secret Service.
Yep, this is what we plan for every day. So we take each and every case and we evaluate it, and we do site assessments. And that's why we go out and build these sites per what the event is, and that's how we go about our business.
So will there be any changes or added measures given that this did happen?
We're going to have to evaluate this evening.
Chief, is there any indication how the suspect got into the hotel? Was it a guest here? Are you searching rooms here?
So preliminary information, we do believe he was a guest here at the hotel. We have secured a room here in the hotel. And again, we'll go through the appropriate procedures to determine what was inside there. But that is secure. At this point, like I said, we believe he is the only suspect in this case.
Okay.
To jump on that question, I understand the multi-approach to security, but to walk in with a weapon of that caliber and get all the way to the ballroom, which is on the lower level, seems to be quite an extraordinary feat. How does that happen?
Sure. So again, I mean, we're very early in the investigation, so we'll have to determine, we'll go through video across the hotel to figure out how the gun got in, how it got down here. Those things will come through the investigation. At this point, we don't have that level of detail.
Okay, last one.
Yes, video appears to show the president falling down when he was being escorted out. Was he injured at all during his evacuation?
No, we don't have any information that he was injured.
Could you clarify how he was detained? If he was not shot, could you clarify how he was detained?
Sure. So law enforcement right here in this very area, they actually tackled him to the ground and handcuffed him.
Can you release his name? Were in the hospital? Can you give us his name?
Not at this time. We will release his name, Mark, once we have all the information. Again, we're still running a lot of things down.
How many people in the hospital?
In the hospital, so we have the Uniform Division Secret Service officer who's being evaluated at the hospital who took a round to the vest, and the suspect is being evaluated, but he was not struck by gunfire.
U.S. Attorney Bureau, are you looking at any terrorism charges?
Well, as the chief just indicated, we're very early in this investigation, but make no mistake, if there is anything like that, we will find it and we will file it.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
All right, that was authorities in Washington, D.C. giving an update on the situation after a shooter made it into the hotel where the White House Correspondents Dinner was being held a little earlier tonight in Washington, D.C. The US President Donald Trump was in attendance. We understand at this point there are no reports of injuries. One Secret Service officer was shot in their bulletproof vest, but they are, we're told, doing well. The major news out of that press conference from authorities just now is that a man believed to be from California has been charged, will be charged with 2 counts of using a firearm during a crime of violence, as well as assault on a federal officer using a dangerous weapon. We heard from the US Attorney, Janine Pirro, there at that press conference saying that this man will be arraigned on Monday. This picture has been released by the White House on Truth Social, by the US President there, of the man who was arrested in believed to be the foyer of the hotel where this event was being held. He's expected to be arraigned on Monday. And when asked if there will be any terror-related charges, the US Attorney said that if there is anything like that, we will find it and we will file it. It's expected that he will be charged with many more charges, they said there at the press conference.
Yeah, authorities there also stepping through what they know at this stage as to how this incident unfolded, noting that they're still in the very early stages of their investigation. But they said that this man was armed with a shotgun, a handgun and multiple knives, that he tried to rush through a Secret Service checkpoint in the lobby of the hotel in Washington, D.C., where the White House Correspondents' Dinner was taking place. They said that he was intercepted, that there was an exchange of gunfire. One Secret Service agent, as you said, Mel was shot, but he was wearing a bulletproof vest and is said to be doing okay. He has been taken to hospital. They've also said that as far as authorities understand at this point, this man appears to have been acting alone. They do not believe that there is still a threat to the public. This event in Washington is such a centrepiece of the social calendar. There are all sorts of after parties, other events that take place around it. Authorities asked about that. They said they had no reason to believe that there was any risk to people there. Also, they were asked about his motivation, and they said it was still too early to know at this stage, that it appears as though he was running towards the ballroom where the President Donald Trump, the First Lady Melania Trump, members of the cabinet, journalists and others were gathered. They said that it's not clear who he may have been targeting. It is very late in Washington, D.C. at the moment. It's past 11 p.m. at night, so it may not be until tomorrow local time that we get some more of those details.
As that press conference has been happening, the Australian Prime Minister Anthony Albanese has released a statement. He said that he's pleased to hear the President and the First Lady, along with all attendees at the White House Correspondents Dinner, are safe. We applaud the work of the Secret Service and law enforcement agencies for their swift action. That was a sentiment really reiterated by authorities in the United States as well. Our America's editor, John Lyons, was at the event in Washington, D.C. when these shots rang out and when this chaos unfolded. He joins us now from outside the building there. John, we've just heard from authorities. They say that the suspect was believed to have been a guest at that hotel. What do we know about what happened inside? And just take us through what it was like for you in the room there.
Well, Melissa, it was pretty frightening. The crowd, about 2,500 or so guests. It's a marquee event, perhaps the event of the year in this town. Washington, D.C. lives and thrives off power and access, and this room was power and access. And in fact, it was not just the President and the First Lady on stage, but Caroline Leavitt, the Vice President, and there were various cabinet secretaries, ministers throughout the place. I walked out into one corridor and there was Scott Besson on my side. There was Stephen Miller, the immigration assistant, was in the bathroom. When I went in there was RFK Jr., a lot of the key cabinet officials, and the national anthem had been sung, the President had been introduced. And so people were told, please begin eating your meals and we'll come back to the formal part of the evening shortly. And then it wasn't long, about 15 minutes after that suddenly there was this shouting going on. And I looked around and there were people sort of scrambling. I couldn't work out what it was. And I said to and people were shouting, down, down. I said to people at our table, get down. And so we got under our tables, and in front of me, the people there were 4 or 5 of them, all almost lying on top of each other. And so in that situation, no one really knows exactly what was going on. And I pulled out my phone to sort of hold it up to try to film. And I looked up at the stage and it was quite eerie because it was completely empty. It had the President, the Vice President, the First Lady, and then suddenly there was no one there at all. And so, as I say, and then through the next few minutes there was different shouting as they were trying to get, suddenly the Secret Service were running in trying to get various cabinet secretaries out of the room. They were evacuating all these VIPs. Sometimes 2 or 3 Secret Service would be trying to run these cabinet secretaries out of the room, and I looked around and there was a Secret Serviceman at the door just behind me who had his gun drawn, and so it was pretty dramatic inside that room.
Yeah, just terrifying, John, and we are glad that you are safe and sound and able to report back to us about what has unfolded there tonight. You're outside the building at the moment. We can see a bit of commotion behind you, lots of lights and sirens. We understand from authorities just recently, of course, this investigation is in its infancy. We know that the accused has been charged with multiple charges at the moment, 2 counts of using a firearm during a crime of violence and assault on a federal officer using a dangerous weapon. Just take us through what's happening around you now as this investigation gets underway. There are no doubt security and FBI agents swarming around you.
Well, one thing that really struck me was in the few minutes after it, when people didn't know what was going on, I saw 2 FBI officers were arguing about what would happen where, and they were trying to run various important or VIP people upstairs. I think they were putting them in lockdown. What really struck me from what President Trump just said before, and the police, is that this man was in the hotel, was outside the ballroom where the President of the United States and a lot of his government. In my view, this was one of the most vulnerable moments ever for an American government, because this man, and I got into the whole hotel just to talk about security. All I needed was this. It's a ticket to the White House Correspondents Association dinner. No name on it, nothing. No passport. I took my passport and everything along thinking it's going to be high security. I arrived at the Washington Hilton. I got into the gate just by showing this. Anybody could have found this. And then I got into the hotel itself, no security. Then I went through the reception, no security. Then I went down then you had to go downstairs to the terrace area, no security. So essentially, this man, armed with at least 2 guns and several knives, was one door away from being able to get into a room full of some of the most powerful, important, influential people in the United States. If he'd got through those doors, it's dreadful to think what he could have done. And I think that, as President Trump himself said in his briefing just before, it's not a terribly secure building. This is also the same building, by the way, just up the hill there. The famous attack, the assassination attempt on Ronald Reagan, happened at the same hotel, the Washington Hilton, in the driveway. And so I think yet again the Secret Service in America will be called upon to ask why this yellow ticket was enough to get anybody to within a door of the President of the United States, the Vice President, the First Lady, the Secretary of Defense, the Treasury Secretary, the Head of Health, RFK Jr., and a lot of the Trump cabinet. As I say, I think this was one of the most vulnerable that the American government has been. Fortunately, that single checkpoint that this man tried to storm was the only difference between him getting stopped and him getting into the room with the President.
Yeah, John, we saw the repercussions of the attempt on Donald Trump's life when he was still a presidential candidate in Butler, Pennsylvania. Huge questions asked of the Secret Service then. What do you expect, at this stage at least, to be the fallout from what's happened there tonight?
Well, as you say, in terms of Butler, I mean, when you had the gunman on a roof, and anybody, even without a security background, would have realised that from those roofs you had access, you had line of sight with the President from not that far away. I'm shocked the security here tonight at the Washington Hilton was less than the security you would face at Sydney or Melbourne or Brisbane airports. The security here tonight, and I've spent time at the New South Wales Parliament in Sydney, the security here tonight was less than the security at the Victorian or New South Wales parliaments. And I think that it seems to me what happened was there was Secret Service everywhere, that they were very much focused on the President himself. But all the other cabinet secretaries, I think, were quite exposed. As I say, I mean, you're walking by Scott Bessent and they're coming in and out of the reception and nobody's showing any ID or any passports. All you needed was this little yellow ticket to get yourself downstairs, and then you just went through a metal detector. That's it. And it's the quickest I've been through. As I say, Sydney Airport, much more secure than it was here tonight. And I think that's quite a frightening thing for the United States.
And authorities in those two briefings, John, have said that there was a multi-layered approach to the security at this event, that this line of defence where this man was intercepted, that did its job, but obviously huge questions to be asked in the days ahead. What did you make of Donald Trump's response in that press briefing, saying that he wanted to keep this event going but was told that couldn't happen because of protocol reasons, and vowing to restage it within 30 days?
Yes, it was. I thought President Trump sounded quite a little bit sort of fatigued and a bit shaken. He wasn't his normal ebullient self. And from talking to people here tonight, there were a lot of security and other people around, and it appeared that President Trump did want, even though this chaos and people had been under tables and one man was helped out of the room, carried out by two other people, because I think he'd injured himself when he'd fallen under the table. Some people were terrified, and I think that Donald Trump apparently did want this to go ahead, even after all of that. It's very much, as we know, in his DNA. Famously at Butler, one of those iconic moments where when he was grazed in the ear, hit in the ear, and his reflexive response to that. And it was an extraordinary moment with a fist in the air, we all remember, and fight, fight, fight. And in a way, from that moment, he was always going to win that election, because this was a man who was able to present as almost indestructible. And that image of the fight, fight, fight was seared into this nation's consciousness. So tonight, when he said he didn't know whether he was hearing a gunshot or a tray dropping. But when he found out what had happened, he apparently did want the event to go ahead. His view, I think, is we're not going to let these sort of would-be shooters or assassins, whatever they were trying to do, he was trying to do, derail an event. But it appears that the Secret Service and the whole security apparatus of this country overruled him and said to him, you can't go ahead with this. And the protocol for that is that at any presidential event, if someone tries to shoot or has a gun, then the Secret Service wants the event to be completely cancelled. And the logic behind that is that if security is broken down to the extent that someone has got a gun into an event, then others may have got guns into the event. And so for this man to have got two guns and several knives apparently right into the outside the ballroom, I think shook the Secret Service. And you could see them. They were running by and they were anxious and they didn't know which way to go. And part of the fear of the moment tonight was that, of course, nobody really knows what's happening, including the president, and people don't know whether there could be another shooter, who it is, and then every time the Secret Service were rushing through the crowd, trying to get the VIPs out of the room, then suddenly people would think that there was a shooter there or someone over here. And so this fear just rippled across this room of 2,500 people. And it was remarkable to see 2,500, including some of the most powerful people in this country, owners of media, chief executives of television networks, editors. The BBC had two tables. All the major news organisations, with the exception, I think, of the New York Times, were there. And to suddenly see this room of powerful people just ducking under their table, taking cover and not knowing, they were looking in every direction. So it was a pretty extraordinary event, and everybody was shaken by it, I think. As I say, I saw two FBI guys arguing about which way should be closed off. They were trying to seal off parts of the hotel. People were running around in fear. So an extraordinary night here tonight in Washington.
Absolutely, John. And there are, of course, a lot more questions to come in as this investigation continues. We're hearing from authorities that, it is obviously very early days. They do at this stage, though, believe that this is a lone wolf incident. Donald Trump described this man who has been arrested as a lone wolf whack job. He said that these people are crazy and that he'll be spending his life in prison. Obviously, the court system will, proceed with those charges as that, investigation continues. But one of the questions that came up a lot during the president's press conference was potential motivations and whether or not this had anything to do with the war in Iran. The president sort of seemed to play down those suggestions, though, didn't he?
Well, yes, I don't think at this point anybody knows what his motivation was. Obviously, you have to be extremely mentally unstable and unwell to want to engage in that sort of violence against anybody, whether it's the president or somebody in the street. If you're carrying at least 2 guns and several knives, then clearly this person is not a stable or well person. So I don't think we know the motivation here, but this is a country where there are more guns than people. We know the gun culture here. There's a lot of guns around the place. And I think, that's part of the ongoing situation here. But I think that surely next time you would think that to even get into the grounds of the Hilton Hotel or wherever it is, or into the actual hotel, surely you'd think you'd have to go through metal detectors or whatever. But it sounds like someone was suggesting, one of the reports was suggesting that he may have been staying at the hotel. And because this was such a well choreographed, well flagged event, it's been on the calendar. It's possible that someone like this thought, if I get to the hotel even a few days earlier, then I know the event's going to be here. It's pretty rare that the president's schedule is known so far in advance. And this is such a high-profile case here because Donald Trump, as president, has never addressed this White House Correspondents Association dinner. These are people there are many people in the room that he loathes, and he thinks they tried to stop him becoming president a second time. And the only time Donald Trump's attended this event was in 2011 when Barack Obama was president. Famously, President Obama got up at the lectern, and it's usually a bit of a roast, this speech, and he absolutely tore through Donald Trump, who was sitting in front of him. He mocked him, he made fun of him, he told jokes about him, and Donald Trump hated that. So tonight was going to be the night, the vindication night for Donald Trump, where he returned to the Lion's Den knowing that a lot of people in this room didn't want him to become president the first time, let alone the second time. And he was going to, in the style of Donald Trump, I think he was going to let a lot of people in the room know really clearly what he thought of them. And so that's, as you say, that's been put off. He has said that this event should be held within the next 30 days. And I suspect it won't be at this location, or if it is, the security here will be much better next time.
All right, America's editor John Lyons reporting there for us from Washington, D.C. John, thanks very much for your insights and analysis this evening. We will check back in with you soon. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, for those of you who are just joining us, here's a recap of what we know so far. There have been dramatic events in Washington, D.C., with a major security incident unfolding at the White House Correspondents Dinner. The US president was rushed out of the ballroom of the Hilton Hotel after reports of shots being fired in the foyer outside the high-profile event. Attendees report hearing what they believed to be 5 to 8 loud bangs. The incident unfolded just after 10:30 this morning Australian time. Donald Trump was attending the dinner for the first time as the sitting president. Secret Service agents swarmed the room, yelling for people to get down. Hundreds of prominent journalists, celebrities and national leaders were there, including Vice President J.D. Vance, Defence Secretary Pete Hegseth and Secretary of State Marco Rubio. No one was hurt. The White House has released CCTV footage showing a man charging through a security checkpoint. The president posted on social media shortly after the incident to confirm a shooter had been apprehended. He also thanked law enforcement for acting quickly and bravely. It's now been confirmed the White House Correspondents' Dinner will be rescheduled in the next 30 days.
Well, US President Donald Trump has spoken after that security incident at the White House Correspondents Dinner, where he was evacuated from.
And that was very unexpected, but incredibly acted upon by Secret Service and law enforcement. And this was an event dedicated to freedom of speech that was supposed to bring together members of both parties with members of the press. And in a certain way it did, because the fact that they just unified, I saw a room that was just totally unified. It was in one way a very beautiful thing to see. A man charged a security checkpoint armed with multiple weapons, and he was taken down by some very brave members of Secret Service, and they acted very quickly and have just released, for purposes of transparency, clarity, I've ordered it to be put out. You probably have it by now, put out on Truth and put out on many of the platforms. A tape showing the violence of this thug that attacked our Constitution, and also showing how quickly Secret Service and law enforcement acted on our country's behalf. Really did a great job. One officer was shot, but saved by the fact that he was wearing obviously a very good bulletproof vest. He was shot from very close distance with a very powerful gun, and the vest did the job. I just spoke to the officer, and he's doing great. He's in great shape. He has very high spirits, and we told him we love him and respect him, and he's a very proud guy. He's very proud of what he does, Secret Service agent. And we looked at all of the conditions that took place tonight, and I will say, you know, it's not a particularly secure building, and I didn't want to say this, but this is why we have to have all of the attributes of what we're planning at the White House. It's actually a larger room, and it's much more secure. It's drone-proof, it's bulletproof glass. We need the ballroom. That's why Secret Service, that's why the military are demanding it. They've wanted the ballroom for 150 years for lots of different reasons, but today's a little bit different, because today we need levels of security that probably nobody's ever seen before. But everyone owes a tremendous debt of gratitude to the courage of law enforcement, the law enforcement, and working with the D.C. police.
Well, Professor Claire Finkelstein is a national security expert at the University of Pennsylvania, and she joins us now. Claire, thank you so much for your time today. Quite an extraordinary night in Washington, D.C. Just take us through initially your first thoughts on what's unfolded there tonight.
Well, it is an extraordinary event, especially after what happened in Butler, Pennsylvania, not that long ago. And we're only 1 month in to Mike Mullen's term as Secretary of Homeland Security. And of course, the President's security detail, the entire Secret Service apparatus reports directly to the Secretary of Homeland Security. So immediately, although President Trump was very thankful to his security detail and had nothing but praise for them, a similar thing happened with Butler, Pennsylvania, where he was very, very grateful, very complimentary to his team. But in the aftermath, there were a lot of security lapses that started to emerge. And it is rather extraordinary that someone could penetrate so easily into the area right outside the ballroom by sort of charging this security checkpoint station. So there's going to be a lot of reviewing of that situation. And your reporter there who talked about the lack of checking of his own security details, able to walk in with a simple piece of paper is emblematic, tells you something about possibly the level of security that was going on surrounding this event. So all of that is now going to be under a microscope as the FBI and the Department of Homeland Security works to try to unpack what exactly happened tonight and where the security lapses were.
Yeah, absolutely. And as you say, Claire, there were some lapses identified after the incident in Butler, Pennsylvania. Can you explain to us what some of those lapses were and what has changed in the Secret Services and the FBI's approach to events like this and their approach to security of the US president, given this is not the first time that there has been an incident like this?
Right. Well, let's remember that was an open-air event, and it was a campaign event, so a very different sort of situation from the actual president of the United States. But in that situation, it was a really enormous risk that the security team ran to hold the event in that situation because there was a access to the president while he was speaking at that campaign event from this roof that was fairly unguarded. And so the shooter was able to access the roof and gain access to the president with his line of sight, and the entire roof was just open. So that was a pretty shocking discovery afterwards to realize that vulnerability had been left wide open at that point. It is very, I'm not a security expert myself, but everybody understands very well that a rooftop is a very easy magnet, very easy access point for some malefactor who wants to shoot either the speaker, in this case, the president who was running for office, or down into the crowd. And indeed, someone was killed at that event.
The president has said that he wants to reschedule this event within the next 30 days. He was asked whether he would rethink making appearances like this, and he said that he didn't want to. It's very early days in this investigation, but do you think that there would need to be some significant changes made, given how closely it appears this man got to where Donald Trump was?
Well, what's very interesting to me is the reporting that this individual was a guest in the hotel. Now, nothing has been confirmed at this point. But if indeed he was a guest in the hotel, that right away suggests a vulnerability, and that people who were not part of the event could be milling around the lobby of the hotel with nothing but a checkpoint between them and access to the event. So that does suggest a concern and potential vulnerability. They'll obviously be digging into that in a lot more detail in the coming days and weeks. But yes, I might imagine that they will rethink rescheduling this event as they start to look into the vulnerability. And it is extremely difficult as it's easier and easier for members of the public to arm up. This individual was, by the reports I've heard, very heavily armed. And it is not difficult for people to get guns, even long guns of the sort that he was equipped with. So it is extremely difficult to plan major events of this sort. And indeed, Donald Trump has himself cited the need for a more secure facility in talking about the plans for the new ballroom. So he is presumably well aware of the vulnerabilities in holding an event like this. He's very determined to do it. He seemed supposedly undaunted, but I agree with your reporter that for those of us who listen to him speak very frequently, he did seem shaken up and a little bit rawer and maybe more candid than he sometimes is in the level of bravado with which he speaks.
And we've been told that the suspect has been charged with several offences, that he'll be arraigned on Monday, but that more charges could be to come. How do you expect that process to play out from here?
Right. Well, this will be a standard criminal process. So the charges he would have been charged with tonight are arrest charges, and the indictment charges, the charges that he'll go before a judge with for arraignment, can vary from the arrest charges. So the charges that he received tonight are simply the ones that the police gave him in arresting him, presumably reading him his Miranda rights, and telling him what he was being taken into custody for. They will start investigating, and of course they're going to search his abode in California. They're going to look into the possibility of terrorism charges. They don't know what the motive was, and they don't even know yet whether or not the president was a target, which could potentially change the nature of the charges, though we don't know yet what those charges are.
Yeah, of course. And this is, early days in the investigation. But Claire, just explain to us where this investigation might go from here. We understand that, this suspect was from California, so presumably there will be investigations, on the other side of the country.
Right. So they're going to search his home. They're going to talk to anyone who knew him out in California. They're going to talk to members of his family, assuming that he has family. And they're going to obviously look at hotel surveillance videos and try to figure out what he was doing this evening and in the days preceding. We're going to find out, presumably, how long he had been checked into that hotel, if indeed the report is correct that he had been a guest in that hotel. How much planning went into this? Is this someone who had been planning this move for many days and weeks, or is this someone who happened to be armed, happened to be staying there, and acted on a spur of the moment? The number of weapons that he has suggests significant planning, much more likely to suggest planning. And obviously, one of the main things they're going to be looking into is whether or not he acted alone or had anybody's help. So far, they are saying that he was a lone wolf, that there's no evidence that he acted in concert with anyone, but there may have been people who helped him along the way, or people who were aware that he was planning some sort of incident, some sort of attack. So all of that will start to emerge as information trickles out about from the FBI investigation that has already started and will be very intense, I assume, in the next several days.
Absolutely. Professor Claire Finkelstein, thank you so much for your time and analysis this evening. We really appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Thanks for having me.
Well, an Associated Press employee was inside the venue when the incident unfolded and gave this first-hand account. Let's take a listen.
Suddenly the dinner had just started. President and First Lady had just been brought into the room. A few minutes later, people were just in their first course, and there was some sort of loud commotion. Secret Service came running up. They immediately pulled the President and First Lady and Carolyn Leavitt, who were on the dais. They pulled them to safety, and then everybody was laying on the ground. We were all the journalists, all the guests, all the dignitaries were on the ground. Slowly, Secret Service appeared to be clearing the room, looking. It's unclear exactly what happened, but I saw slowly, we saw Marco Rubio, Stephen Miller and his wife, Katie Miller, get pulled out. We also saw Scott Bessent and Energy Secretary Chris Wright also being moved to safety very quickly. Secret Service moved very, very quickly. But right now, we really just don't know what's going on. There was some loud noise, some scuffle of some sort, but what exactly happened to precipitate what happened is, frankly, right now, it's a little bit unclear.
Just extraordinary events unfolding in Washington, D.C. tonight. Well, US President Donald Trump has also revealed that one officer was shot at during the incident, but was saved by a bulletproof vest. The FBI Director Kash Patel says investigations at the scene are underway.
Thanks to our interagency partnership with the Department of Homeland Security and the Metropolitan Police Department, the FBI was rapidly deployed onto the scene, took over the evidence response unit, is examining all the ballistics that were found on scene to include the long gun and the shell casings. We are conducting witness interviews as we speak. You will hear from our team on the scene there with the mayor and the head of the FBI field division there. But please know what the Attorney General has just said reigns no truer. You saw the very best of America tonight. The very best unite us at a time of uncertainty, because we have leadership here with the president and the vice president that backs law enforcement, and the men and women that I shook their hands on the scene today could not have been prouder to show up on scene. And as the Attorney General said, make no mistake, we are conducting witness interviews. If you have any information whatsoever related to this event, 1-800-CALL-FBI. 1-800-CALL-FBI. No piece of information is too small. No piece of information is inadequate. We will evaluate it all. We will also be conducting interviews of those that were there. And if any of those individuals have information, please come forward to law enforcement or the FBI or the Metropolitan Police Department. We will be examining this individual's background thoroughly. That process has already started. And we are going to ensure that he was either a lone wolf actor or anyone else that was responsible. We will analyze all evidence immediately to make sure that we safeguard this country.
Well, for more, we're joined by former FBI agent Kenneth Gray, a professor of practice of criminal justice at the University of New Haven. Kenneth, thank you very much for your time. Can I get your initial thoughts on this incident first of all, and what would law enforcement agencies be doing right at this moment?
Sure. So at this moment, FBI agents are busy conducting investigations in various locations. They are searching through his hotel room. They are doing interviews of people who were in the immediate area of the interaction with the shooter. They will be getting search warrants for his residence. They will be getting search warrants for any computers he would have in his residence. They will be conducting interviews of people that know him out in California, family members, colleagues, neighbors, all trying to put the picture together of who this person is. His social media will also be examined. And so a lot of moving pieces in this investigation. This is also going to be an investigation focused on his interaction, his shooting of a U.S. Secret Service uniformed officer. The officer was shot. It was not shot at, he was shot, but fortunately he had on a bulletproof vest. But since he was shot, this is going to be an investigation that will also focus in on proving that particular aspect of the case so that those charges can be brought, the person can be brought to court for those charges.
Questions are being asked about the level of security at this event. From what you've seen so far, have any concerns been raised for you about how secure this dinner was?
Sure. So the Secret Service operates in layers of security, and so the layers of security include Metropolitan Police out on the outer perimeter. Then you have Secret Service and Metropolitan Police inside the hotel there, and then they have the final checkpoint is where he tried to breach through, and then there's the magnetometer, and then the entry into the ballroom there. He managed to get to the checkpoint. He was able to do that, presumably because he was a guest at the hotel. So the question that is in my mind is, did they check who the guests were inside the hotel? Did they run their names? Was there anything that stood out about this guy? Because he apparently had a shotgun, a handgun, multiple knives, and he assembled the shotgun there while he was in his room, and then went down with that shotgun and raced towards the checkpoint. So that in itself is a big flag as to the security level at that point. The fact that he was able to get to the checkpoint with that shotgun.
Kenneth, in your experience, what does what we know so far sort of indicate about the level of planning that has gone into this incident? You know, we understand that he was armed with multiple knives, 2 guns, and may have been, as you've been saying, a guest at this hotel. What does that sort of indicate about the level of planning here?
Well, to me, it shows his intent that he flew from California. Let's say that he flew from California there to the D.C. area and stayed at the hotel in preparation for having this attack. And so that shows that he has planned this out. He had his weapons. He put together his plan. He may have actually intended to try to shoot the president when he was coming into the event. But failed to do that. But that's just a guess on my part. But he did plan to enter into the ballroom here, and Secret Service stopped him before he was able to get that far. But the fact that he was in the hotel here and traveled from California, that shows that he had been planning this for some time. I think that when they examine his social media, they'll find indications of him is thinking along these lines. There is something that is called the pathway to violence. Pathway to violence is when a person is starting to put together a plan. They collect up their weapons. They do their analysis of the event. They maybe even discuss it with other people before they actually carry out the act of violence. And so somewhere along that line, he may have given up indications that he was planning to do this.
It is, of course, still very early in this investigation. We don't yet have any detail around potential motivations or exactly who the target might have been. But, Kenneth, we know that this man has now been charged with 2 counts of using a firearm during a crime of violence, as well as assault on a federal officer using a dangerous weapon. The US Attorney has indicated that more charges are likely. But can you explain to us exactly, you know, what those charges mean and how this could now play out in the courts?
Yeah. On the face of it, these are the charges that he was arrested with. When it goes time to go before a grand jury, there may be additional information that comes out of the investigation that will bring further charges. If it turns out that this person was part of a group, they might be able to, showing that there was a political motivation behind this, he may actually be charged with acts of terrorism. Or this could be an act of a person that is mentally unstable that was carrying out this attack for reasons other than terrorism. So it really depends upon what the investigation will show as to exactly what he will eventually be charged with.
And very early still in that investigation, as you've been saying, Kenneth, but we saw questions asked of the Secret Service in the wake of the attempt on Donald Trump's life when he was still a presidential candidate in Butler, Pennsylvania. What questions do you think would be being asked now, and do you expect that changes will have to be made to the president's security in light of this?
Well, the Secret Service learns from every time there is an event like this, and they make changes to their way of operating for future events based upon mistakes made in past events. And so I'm sure that from this particular event, they will be examining the fact that he was able to get as far as he did in this event. By the way, this was not a national special security event, an NSSE. NSSEs have preparation for that months and months ahead of time, and the Secret Service has total control of that event. This particular event was not an NSSE, so Secret Service was there protecting the president, but because the president was going to be in attendance there, they had taken special efforts to make sure the event was secure, but it was different than it would have been had it been an NSSE. They may, in the future, require events like this to be NSSEs.
Retired FBI Special Agent Kenneth Gray, thank you very much for your time. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Well, our America's editor, John Lyons, was one of the attendees at the Washington Correspondents Dinner where this incident occurred. Let's take a listen to the moment the President, the First Lady and other officials were quickly evacuated. From John's perspective, he was towards the back of the room.
There's just been a major security incident here. We don't know what has happened, but the president has been put under a table. You can see here people are on the floor all around. It's pretty scary because we don't know what's happened. It looks like they've taken someone, but as you can see here, you can see that the entire room, essentially 2,000 or so, 500 people, are all pretty amazing here when you can see these people below me.
كلنا على الأرض بقلب العشاء.
Down here you'll see people underneath. Suddenly this huge.
هيدا الشيء طلبوا منا فجأة إنه نقفوا.
There's still something happening over there.
وما زال.
I mean, there's Secret Service people all over the place.
That was the ABC's America's editor, John Lyons, who was in the room at the the White House Correspondents Dinner in Washington when the incident unfolded. Some other attendees have also given their recounts of the shooting from outside the auditorium. Let's take a listen.
I was in the lower lobby there, and right before the escalator that goes down, and we heard 3 shots back to back, pop, 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 and I bolted for the door. I didn't even wait to see, what was going on behind me. I just heard it, and it sounded like it was behind me, so I ran out.
Man, we were sitting there, and all of a sudden we heard a few loud bangs, and it's hard to tell immediately, but then a bunch of people came sprinting into the room, and we saw everybody getting rushed out, Donald Trump first, and that's when it became pretty obvious what was going on, and every single person around me just jumped under a table.
I was in the bathroom when I heard 6 or 7 shots ring, I'm not sure exactly, and what was going through my head was that I thought those were gunshots, but I could not be certain. And when a woman from the security services, either from the hotel or law enforcement, not sure exactly, she confirmed that those were gunshots and that we should shelter in place.
Well, police in Washington, D.C. say the man was armed with a shotgun, a handgun and multiple knives. The city's mayor, Muriel Bowser, says it's believed the suspect was acting alone.
A sole gunman rushed a Secret Service checkpoint in a lobby at the hotel. Secret Service agents stopped the suspect. An agent was injured and transported to a local hospital where the agent is receiving care. The suspect is also transported to a local hospital where he is being evaluated. The president returned safely to the White House, as you know. We are so very thankful to members of law enforcement who did their jobs tonight and made sure that all guests were safe. We have no reason to believe at this time that anyone else was involved.
That was authorities giving an update from Washington, D.C. a little earlier on this incident at the White House Correspondents Dinner. We do have some pictures coming in now from California, live pictures of what's believed to be the suspect's house, where there are numerous media outlets camped outside and police coming and going from the area. We understand, of course, that a a man in his 30s from California has been charged over this incident. He's been charged with 2 counts of using a firearm during a crime of violence, as well as assault on a federal officer using a dangerous weapon. As we heard there, authorities say that he was armed with 2 guns and multiple knives. He's expected to be arraigned in court on Monday, and that there are likely to be many more charges to come as this investigation continues. Well, a little earlier we spoke with Planet America host John Barron, who says that this incident is another failure of the Secret Service.
Well, a truly stunning development, no doubt about it. Almost 2 years since now President Trump narrowly survived an assassination attempt in Butler, Pennsylvania, when his ear was clipped. The security clearly at this White House Correspondents Association dinner, the first time Donald Trump has attended this dinner as President of the United States, was, as we've heard, incredibly tight. And yet there has been another massive security breach, that shots were fired in the vicinity of the President of the United States. Many members of his cabinet, the Vice President, the next in line to the presidency. That this has happened is another catastrophic failure for the United States Secret Service. We don't yet know who the shooter was. There are those reports that somebody is in custody, that according to White House pool reports coming from the US Secret Service, that a suspect is in custody, that up to 5 shots were fired. And of course, no idea as to what the possible motive was. There are, Mel, reports coming through now from that White House press pool that Robert F. Kennedy Jr., the Health and Human Services Secretary, whose father, of course, Bobby Kennedy Sr., was shot and killed in a hotel ballroom campaigning for the presidency in 1968, that RFK Jr. and his wife, the actress Cheryl Hines, were among those evacuated. RFK was seen to be limping. Now, we don't know whether that was as a result of an injury or a wound, or possibly he injured himself at the gym yesterday. We don't know, but that is one report that is coming through. Lots of other members of the cabinet have been evacuated as well. The president, we do know, is safe, according to CNN and social media posts from the president, we assume. So at this stage, we're piecing together exactly what has happened, but as you say, another astonishing development in American politics.
Absolutely. John, and as you say, this is, almost 2 years since the US president was shot, narrowly avoiding that assassination attempt during the presidential campaign. We've just heard from John Lyons about how strict the security was in the room there. He said he was having to get, re-screened, even just leaving the room to go to the bathroom and return. So just take us through how seriously would have security been bolstered since that assassination attempt almost 2 years ago, and now to have this incident unfold, it is, as you say, pretty astonishing.
One factor in all of this that has to be remembered, every American president is, of course, a potential target for an assassin, whether it's a deranged or politically motivated individual from the United States or as a result of international terrorism. An important note here, and we do not know the identity or the motivation of this potential shooter, but just as was the case 2 years ago in Butler, Pennsylvania, there was an immediate concern that this may have been the work of Iran. Iran has been trying to assassinate Donald Trump since 2017 because of his actions in killing the head of the Revolutionary Guard, General Soleimani. There's been the equivalent of a fatwa against Donald Trump and senior members of his then administration. So there is something we have to keep a very close eye on here, because this could be about more than just a potential domestic assassination attempt. This could have implications for the conflict in Iran as well. So we await with interest to see developments there. But the very fact that President Trump, we saw him being ushered away by the Secret Service, but that shots were fired close enough to that ballroom to have everybody else hitting the ground and hiding under their tables, hundreds and hundreds of high-profile journalists and celebrities. And this was a security breach that is going to require quite immediate answers as to how this has potentially happened again.
John Barron there. Well, let's recap what we know so far. There have been dramatic events in Washington, D.C., with a major security incident unfolding at the White House Correspondents Dinner. The US president was rushed out of the ballroom of the Hilton Hotel after reports of shots being fired in the foyer outside the high-profile event. Attendees have reported hearing what they believe to be 5 to 8 loud bangs. The incident unfolded just after 10:30 this morning Australian Eastern Time. Donald Trump was attending the dinner for the first time as sitting president. Secret Service agents swarmed the room, yelling for people to get down. Hundreds of prominent journalists, celebrities and national leaders were there, including Vice President J.D. Vance, Defence Secretary Pete Hegseth and Secretary of State Marco Rubio. No one was hurt, although one Secret Service agent was shot. Authorities say he was wearing a bulletproof vest that did its job and he's okay. The White House has released CCTV footage showing a man charging through a security checkpoint. The president posted on social media shortly after the incident to confirm that a shooter had been apprehended. He also thanked law enforcement for acting quickly and bravely. He says the White House Correspondents' Dinner will be rescheduled in the next 30 days.
Well, US President Donald Trump has praised his Secret Service security detail following the incident at the White House Correspondents' Dinner in Washington, D.C. Let's take a listen.
It's always shocking when something like this happens. Happened to me a little bit, and that never changes. The fact we were sitting right next to each other, First Lady on my right, and I heard a noise and sort of thought it was a tray. I thought it was a tray going down. You know, I've heard that many times, and it was a pretty loud noise. And it was from quite far away. He hadn't breached the area at all. They really got him. But so it was quite far away, but it was a gun. And some people really understood that pretty quickly. Other people didn't. I was watching to see what was happening. Probably should have gone down even faster. Melania was very cognizant, I think, of what happened. I think she knew immediately what happened. She was saying, that's a bad noise. And we were whisked away along with other people, but we were really whisked away. And again, the performance of the Secret Service and the police, all of the law enforcement, I thought was really good. So it was very quick. There wasn't a lot of time to be thinking, because it was a matter of seconds before we were out the door and gone into an area. We very much, and you wanted to too, we very much wanted to continue it, because I don't like to let these sick people, these thugs, these horrible, horrible people, change the fabric of our life, change the course of what we do. So we held out. You were there. We held out right till the end, but they didn't want to take a chance, and I understand there was protocol. But we're going to be doing one hopefully within the next 30 days or sooner, and I am ready, willing, and able, and I was all set to really rip it. And I said to my people, this would be the most inappropriate speech ever made if I said one. So I'll have to save it. I don't know if I could ever be as rough as I was going to be tonight. I think I'm going to be probably very nice. I'll be very boring the next time, but we're going to have a great event. Well, you know, I've studied assassinations, and I must tell you, the most impactful people, the people that do the most, you take a look at the people, Abraham Lincoln, I mean, you go through the people that have gone through this where they got them, but the people that do the most, the people that make the biggest impact, they're the ones that they go after. They don't go after the ones that don't do much because they like it that way. And when you look at the people that have either, whether it was an attempt or a successful attempt, they're very impactful people. Just take a look at the names there, the big names. And I hate to say I'm honored by that, but I've done a lot. We've done a lot. We've taken this country, and we were a laughing stock for years, and now we're the hottest country anywhere in the world. We've changed this country, and there are a lot of people that are not happy about that. I mean, these people they're crazy. They're crazy, and you know, you never know. He was very far away from me. He had to go through a lot. We had we had resources all over. We had resources sitting at tables, literally in disguise, sitting maybe at your table, who knows? But we had people all over the room, so he had a long way to go. That was really a first line of defense, and they got him. And they really, they acted incredibly. No, there was no notification. We had no idea. Go ahead.
Mr. President.
Yeah, please, go ahead.
Are you concerned about political violence? This could be politically motivated.
All violence. I'm concerned about everything. Look, but I can't be so concerned that you can't function. No, I'm here. It's a dangerous profession. I tell the story. Race car drivers, I think it's very dangerous. So if you take 1% and then take about 10% of 1%, just to break it down very easily, they die. So much less than 1%, 10% of 1%. I think bull riding is very dangerous. If you take about the same 10% of 1%, much less than 1%, but if you take presidents, it's 5.8%, and about 8% are shot at. So nobody told me this was such a dangerous profession. If Marco would have told me, maybe I wouldn't have run. Maybe I would have said, I'll take a pass. No, it's a dangerous profession, but I don't view it that way. Look, I'm here to do a job. As part of the job, it is a dangerous. I can't imagine that there's any profession that's more dangerous. But I love the country, and I'm very proud. I'm very proud of the job we've done. You see what's happened. We have a great country. We've got, I think, the most successful, the hottest country anywhere in the world. This happened over a period of just a year, and we're going to do great things. But with that come risks. There's no question about it.
Thank you, President Trump. Do you know how the gun was brought into the hotel? And also, how does this event impact you as the leader of our country? Do you think it will change your
I
leadership?
like not to think about it. I lead a pretty normal life, considering it's a dangerous life. I think I handle it as well as it can be handled. I think a lot of other people, you read stories where they become basket cases. To be honest with you, I'm not a basket case. I really take it as it is. I do it for the country. I'm not doing it for any other reason. I have a first lady who's doing a terrific job. She loves the country, and she recognizes it better than anybody. She's told me numerous times. She said, "You are in a dangerous job," but that goes along with her too. I mean, it's dangerous for her too. We sat there tonight. We heard that noise, and it was either a tray or a bullet. I was hoping it was a tray, but it wasn't. And again, we had some very brave people doing a great job, so we're very proud of them and happy with them. I just want to thank everybody. They will be able to give you all that information as to the names and everything else. I think we released the names already. Most of you would have it, but his name. We appreciate it. I see so many tuxedos and beautiful dresses.
That was US President Donald Trump speaking a little earlier this afternoon, not long after a security incident at the White House Correspondents Dinner in Washington, D.C., where a man charged a security checkpoint armed with multiple guns and knives. Our America's editor, John Lyons, was one of the attendees at the Correspondents Dinner when this incident occurred. Let's take a listen to the moment the President, First Lady and other officials were quickly evacuated from John's perspective towards the back of the room.
There's just been a major security incident here. We don't know what has happened, but the president has been put under a table. You can see here people are on the floor all around. It's pretty scary because we don't know what's happened. It looks like they've taken someone, but as you can see here, you can see that the entire room, essentially 2,000 or so, 500 people, are all pretty amazing here when you can see these people below me.
كلنا على الأرض بقلب العشاء.
Down here you'll see people underneath. Suddenly this huge
هيدا الشيء طلبوا منا
America's editor John Lyons. That's where we're leaving our coverage for now of this incident in Washington. I'm Jade McMillan.
And I'm Melissa McKay. Thanks for your company. You can stay up to date on the ABC News website and, of course, on ABC iView. We'll have more on this incident throughout the afternoon here on the ABC News channel. Thanks for your company.